Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Natalia Martinez. Natalia Martinez was born in the late 1980s in Montevideo, the capital of Uruguay, and she was the youngest daughter in her family. While not much is known about her personality, she had a close relationship with her relatives, especially her older sister, Claudia. Her father was a senior salesman for a large international company that sold household appliances, which allowed the family to live comfortably. Natalia was a cheerful and friendly girl. During her teenage years, she formed a close-knit group of friends who supported one another during difficult times. These friends later described her as sociable and able to connect easily with strangers. After graduating from high school, Natalia began spending more time with her friends. They enjoyed going to various parties and eventually expanded their adventures by visiting the beaches of Uruguay for fun. To celebrate her 19th birthday on January 1st, 2007, Natalia and her friends planned a trip to La Paloma, a small resort town, where they stayed for 2 weeks. On January 16th, they traveled to a nearby resort in the city of Riles, where Natalia was delighted to meet her parents and sister, who were there for a 4-day vacation. The Natalia family had a wonderful time enjoying beach activities and were well known in the town, as they frequently visited. They often returned to the same places, making it feel like a second home. On January 18th, Natalia and her sister Claudia decided to drive to Punta del Este, another tourist town less than an hour away from Riles. They planned to stop at a popular local spa located about halfway between the two towns in the Serra San Antonio area. After their beauty treatment, the girls planned to go to a disco with 3 of Natalia's friends. However, as the evening approached, Claudia felt very tired and decided to go home to their parents. Despite this, 19-year-old Natalia Martinez was determined to stick to her plans. She wanted to enjoy herself, so she went with her friends to a popular party at the local nightclub, La Arena Canada, where they stayed until around 5 a.m. As morning approached, the girls decided to leave the party and head home. At that time, Natalia was talking with a man named Leonardo Roccovan, an old acquaintance who owned a bookstore. They stopped near the exit and continued their conversation. However, Natalia became so engrossed in her discussion with Leonardo that her friends decided to go outside and get into the car they had arrived in, planning to head home together. The girls got tired and got into the car. One of them decided to check on Natalia, but when they returned to the nightclub, they found that Natalia and Leonardo were gone. The friends realized that Natalia could not have left alone or with anyone else without letting them know. Since they did not see her leave, they began to worry. They went up to the second floor, out of the bar, and saw Leonardo's BMW in the parking lot. The owner was inside the car, and because the windows were tinted, Rosalia and Silva could not see if anyone was in the passenger seat. However, they did notice some movement inside the car. The girls called out to Leonardo to ask about Natalia. He said he was in the car with a friend and mentioned that he had spoken to Natalia briefly before they parted ways. He claimed he had no idea what happened to her afterward or why she didn't return to her friends. The girls assumed Natalia had gone home, so they got into the car and drove to her friends' relatives, who were at the police station, just a 10-minute drive from the club. Rosalia and Silva stopped near the house and honked to get Claudia's attention, trying not to wake the entire family. However, no one responded, so they returned to the club where they last saw Natalia. The girls continued to search for their friend for about 2 hours, but their efforts were unsuccessful. No one knew where she had gone. Around 8 a.m., Silva returned home, exhausted and very worried about her missing friend. Worried about her friend's safety, she decided to tell her parents everything that had happened. She feared something bad might have happened to her friend. Her parents tried to reassure her, telling her to rest and that her friend was probably already home. So, she went to bed. Yet, when she woke up at 11 a.m. that same day, her concerns grew stronger. The entire Natalia family started searching for she. They quickly got involved, and her friends went to the club together to find out what happened. Unfortunately, they were still unsuccessful. The club was closed, and no one had any helpful information. They searched the surrounding area for clues but found nothing. Around 5 p.m., Natalia's family and friends arrived at the police station. Maldonado police investigators received several photos, including one of all the girls relaxing at a club that evening. This helped them understand what the missing girl was wearing so they could come up with a description for the search. The police took their statements seriously and began investigating. Initially, the family said that Natalia had been at a party where she may have had too much to drink and left with someone. However, Rosalia and Silva insisted that Natalia had not consumed any alcohol that night, as she often denied. They also dismissed the police's suspicions that they had used illegal drugs. Police began a search operation. They first went to the location where Natalia was last seen. The club was open, but there were no surveillance cameras at the time. Police spoke to club employees and learned that a group of 3 young men sitting at a nearby table had been trying to approach the women throughout the evening. Natalia's friends confirmed that the men had been harassing them. Despite this information, police ignored the group of young men and instead focused on the acquaintance with whom Natalia had been talking before she disappeared. It was no surprise that Leonardo immediately became the prime suspect, since he was the last person to see Natalia. However, all of Leonardo's acquaintances described him as a kind and calm person who had never shown any signs of cruelty before and was incapable of harming anyone. He was a young businessman. That night, his girlfriend waited for him in the car while he was talking to Natalia. After that, he said goodbye to Natalia and returned to the car with his girlfriend. From the car, he saw Natalia go down the stairs and go out onto the porch. From that moment on, Leonardo was distracted by his conversation with his girlfriend and did not see Natalia again. However, he was not worried about her, since he did not notice anything suspicious around. No one was screaming or making noise. Despite the police suspicions, Leonardo insisted he had nothing to do with Natalia's disappearance. However, the police did not trust him. They needed to conduct a thorough examination of the BMW he drove away in after the party. Several witnesses reported seeing a similar car in various locations around the city, including near a forest on the outskirts. One man claimed he spotted a couple having sex in a car that matched the description on the night she went missing, near a lake by the woods. Police obtained a search warrant for Leonardo's car. During the initial inspection, they found a long, dark hair on the floor of the BMW and sent it for analysis. However, it did not match Natalia. It belonged to someone else. The interior of the car showed no signs of suspicious activity, no blood, or evidence of a struggle. Police speculated that Leonardo had cleaned the car shortly after Natalia Martinez disappeared, which would explain the clean condition of the car. Police used this detail as part of the evidence against Leonardo. However, they still lacked the evidence to arrest him. On January 22nd, a passerby driving on the outskirts of Piriápolis discovered several items on the roadside. Among them were a woman's handbag containing a wallet and a pair of women's shoes. The most crucial piece of evidence was linked to Natalia Martinez, a case that was currently receiving significant media attention. Recognizing the situation, the witness promptly contacted the police. Unfortunately, the media coverage also led to the spread of various rumors, which Natalia's family had to repeatedly deny. One such rumor suggested that Natalia was involved with drug dealers, implying that she had become a victim of criminal activities. However, Natalia's father publicly refuted these claims in an official television statement. Despite the situation, rumors continued to spread. Some claimed to have witnessed her being attacked or even murdered. Instead of receiving assistance from the media, police found themselves overwhelmed by numerous false testimonies each day that needed to be verified, complicating the investigation. Meanwhile, the media eagerly reported even the most outrageous theories. The story was considered compelling and attracted many readers, causing journalists to add fuel to the fire of chaos surrounding the case. The rumors about the missing girl were leveraged to boost newspaper sales. Natalia's family endured immense pain following her disappearance. A large-scale search operation was organized, involving many police officers, friends, family members, and hundreds of volunteers. It was quickly determined that there was no evidence of the girl near the nightclub, prompting the search to extend into more distant areas of Uruguay. Ultimately, the entire coast was thoroughly searched. Most of the search operations took place on land, using service dogs, and later involving military and civilian aircraft. The City Fire Brigade also participated in the search and requested that the sewer systems be inspected. However, no traces of Natalia were found there either. By this point, law enforcement had largely concluded that Natalia was deceased, as the likelihood of finding her alive was very low. The critical window for finding missing persons is usually 48 hours. A significant finding occurred when a bone was discovered on the Grande Plateau, but tests revealed it was not human. Although the search had stalled and no new leads had emerged, Natalia's relatives continued their efforts. They remained hopeful that she was alive and being held against her will. In 2000, a female body was discovered in the forest near Lake Yolo. The body was in poor condition and was sent for examination to determine the identity of the deceased. This location was several kilometers from the club where Natalia was last seen, and the clothing found on the body led police to suspect it might belong to the missing Natalia Martinez. After the discovery of the body, police remembered a couple who had been seen having sex in a car near the forest, which drew attention to that area. The forensic expert who performed the autopsy struggled to gather important information because the body was in an advanced state of decomposition. To ensure a thorough examination, 5 forensic experts were called in. They determined that the body belonged to Natalia Martinez. Their overall assessment suggested that she likely did not die of natural causes, as there were faint signs of strangulation on her neck. Although they ruled out poisoning from substances or alcohol, they could not find evidence of physical or sexual violence due to the body's condition. It was noteworthy that the victim was found tied with nylon thread, but it remained unclear whether this occurred before or after her death. Several months later, while the investigation continued, an unexpected development arose. The man who had found her belongings on the roadside was discovered dead at the bottom of a cliff near his home. His name was initially kept confidential. Initially, it appeared that the man had voluntarily chosen to end his life. However, all his relatives insisted that he would never do such a thing. He was a deeply religious man, cherished his life, and loved his family. An autopsy revealed that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, sustained long before the fall from the cliff, suggesting he had been thrown off. This led police to believe the two cases were linked. But more evidence was needed. The next tragic event involved Natalia's father, Ever Martinez. He had fallen into a deep depression after his daughter's death and the damaging rumors that were circulating about their family. He ended his life at home by shooting himself in the head. His body was discovered by his daughter Claudia and his wife. The police closed the case after confirming that he had acted alone, a conclusion that the family accepted. For a long time, police struggled to make progress in the investigation into Natalia's murder. However, new information emerged from text messages exchanged with a friend just days before Natalia's death. In these conversations, Natalia mentioned a man she had recently met online. It was later discovered that he was one of the men who had been at the nightclub on the day Natalia went missing. These three young men were sitting at a nearby table, and several witnesses had pointed them out from the beginning of the investigation, but this information was overlooked. Police identified all three suspects, who were slightly older than Natalia. After interviewing them, the police became even more suspicious of their involvement, as the men contradicted each other in their statements about where they were and what they did during the night and morning of that tragic day. After this, the police interviewed a witness whose identity was kept confidential for her safety. She was the girlfriend of one of the men who had been arrested. Her testimony revealed that a young man in the group, Rodrigo Verghese, was involved in Natalia's murder. At the time, he was 25 years old, and police later stated that he had previously provided false statements. During the interrogation, police recorded phone conversations that implicated the Rodrigo main suspect. They collected DNA samples from him, but these were not helpful for the investigation due to the advanced decomposition of the remains. After that, the police reached out to the friends and relatives of the Rodrigo. A young man was called to testify on June 8, 2010, along with his friends who had been at a nightclub on the night of Natalia's murder. They all claimed they had no involvement in the incident. They stated that after spending the night at the club, they hired a sex worker to join them in their continued festivities. However, they denied any connection to Natalia. Rodrigo, the prime suspect, denied spending time with the murdered woman and claimed he did not know her. However, messages from the girl revealed that they had spoken online and planned to meet at a party, suggesting that Rodrigo had lied. Initial questioning did not turn up any clues, but a day later, police spoke to the young people again in the hope of getting a confession. This time, Rodrigo confessed. He explained that he had met Natalia online and after chatting for a while, they decided to meet at a club. Unfortunately, their conversation did not go well, and as dawn approached, he suggested they go to another nearby nightclub. Rodrigo misled her. He wanted to be alone with her. During this time, he began to harass her, according to his confession. When she rejected his advances, he seemed to accept it. However, Natalia then suffered an asthma attack, which led to convulsions and ultimately her death, as she did not have her inhaler or any medication with her. Rodrigo was confused and unable to help her. He stated that he panicked during her attack and didn't know what to do, especially when she stopped showing signs of life in his car. After the party, he planned to return to his family's farm, a short distance from the city. However, after Natalia's death, he decided to dispose of her body to avoid any further repercussions. He headed for the woods, thinking it would be a good place to hide her. There, he tied Natalia up, dragged her deeper into the woods, and covered her body with branches. But this was only part of the story. A witness walking along the beach claimed to have seen a couple having sex, and Natalia's body showed signs of strangulation. It seems that Rodrigo neglected to mention that he had strangled and raped her at the same time. Police were later able to confirm that Rodrigo's other friends were not involved in the incident, so they were released shortly after Rodrigo confessed. Rodrigo was formally charged with murder and taken into custody. After the confession, it appeared that the prosecutor's office would easily prove the Rodrigo's guilt. However, in mid-2010, as preliminary hearings began, Rodrigo Verghese recanted his confession. He claimed he admitted to the murder under police pressure and insisted he did not commit the crime. This assertion seemed unlikely because his confession included numerous details only the actual killer would know, including the precise location where the girl's body was found. Still, Rodrigo maintained his innocence. Despite the evidence against him, his defense team supported his statement and sought to demonstrate that Rodrigo was not at the club that night. They presented mobile phone data and a statement from his employer confirming that he had been working his usual evening shift that day. The next day, he attended a friend's wedding, and no one noticed anything unusual about his behavior. On September 2, 2010, Leonardo Roccovan, the bookstore owner who was initially the main suspect in the investigation, was called as a key witness for the prosecution. Leonardo testified that during a conversation, he had an argument with a young man. Leonardo identified the young man as Rodrigo. This indicated that Rodrigo was definitely at the nightclub and not at work. Natalia's friends also confirmed that he was at the nightclub that night. Forensic experts, working with the prosecution, provided insights based on the autopsy results. They noted that, due to the typical symptoms of asthma, the girl could not have died from an asthma attack so quickly. While she did experience an asthma attack, it could not have occurred instantaneously. It took several hours. Additionally, there were signs of strangulation on the victim's neck, which was likely the cause of death. Unfortunately, the experts could not provide further details about the victim's injuries. From late August to mid-September 2010, the prosecution successfully constructed a narrative of the crime, leading to Rodrigo Vergés being found guilty of Natalia Martinez's murder. He received a 9-year prison sentence. However, in February 2011, Rodrigo's lawyer submitted an appeal, claiming that the court's ruling was incorrect and that the prosecution was biased. The lawyer argued that they failed to present a witness to the kidnapping or murder, nor did they provide any compelling direct evidence. Natalia's family expressed disappointment, saying that the criminal received a lighter sentence than the family had expected. Disappointed by this leniency, Natalia's relatives filed a civil lawsuit against Rodrigo Vergés for causing harm to Natalia's family, holding him responsible for her father's death. Initially, they mentioned that Rodrigo should pay $15 in damages. However, after further discussion, both parties agreed to increase the amount of damages to $7,000. The court rejected the request for a longer sentence. On October 27, 2014, the lawyer achieved his goal when Rodrigo, 29, was pardoned after serving only 4 years and 2 months in prison. His release was largely due to his good behavior while in custody. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ashley Wadsworth. Ashley Wadsworth was born on July 25, 2002, in Vernon Township, British Columbia, Canada. She was the daughter of Kenneth Wadsworth and Christy Jenden, and had an older sister named Haley. The Wadsworth family was large and close-knit, consisting of over 50 people, including cousins, uncles, and aunts of varying degrees of kinship, all living in the same community. Ashley was a cheerful, outgoing, and energetic girl who was popular and had many friends. She enjoyed outdoor activities such as swimming, horseback riding, and skiing. She was also passionate about tennis and played the clarinet. Ashley was very active on social media, frequently sharing memes, jokes, and photos. It was through social media that Ashley met Jack Seppel in 2015, when she was 12 years old and he was 15. Jack Seppel was born on January 9, 1999. His mother, Tracy Dalton, was married to a man named Ricky. Jack's relationship with his father, who passed away in 2019, was reportedly strained. Jack did not communicate with his brother, Jordan, but he did stay in touch with his sister, Nadia. Apart from his mother and sister, Jack did not have many close relationships, preferring to interact with people primarily through the internet and video games. According to Jack's acquaintances, he had a mixed reputation in school. On the one hand, he was remembered as a charming, fun, and lively kid. On the other hand, they recalled his dark side, which emerged when he became angry and displayed aggressive behavior towards himself and others. A mutual friend introduced Jack to Ashley through social media, a common way for teenagers to meet and form virtual friendships. As their online relationship grew, Ashley and Jack became close virtual friends. At the time, Ashley didn't have a smartphone and used her family's computer to access social media, so her family was aware of her friendship with Jack. During their long-distance friendship, Jack had relationships with other girls, and Ashley also had typical teenage experiences. Although they occasionally stopped communicating, their connection never completely faded, and they continued to stay in touch over the years. As they grew older, Ashley and Jack's relationship evolved. They started communicating through video calls, which led to a more intimate and romantic relationship. Jack became a familiar figure to Ashley's family, who would often greet him warmly when they saw him talking to the guys. He also sent Ashley gifts, such as teddy bears and purses, on multiple occasions. Ashley's family and friends noticed that she had a tendency to compare every boy she met to Jack. However, due to the significant time difference between their locations, Jack lived in Essex, while Ashley was in Vernon. They struggled to find time to talk, often waking up too early and going to bed too late. As Ashley turned 15 in 2018, she began to express a desire to meet Jack in person. However, her family refused to let her travel alone to another continent. Like many young couples, they occasionally argued, and when Ashley would block Jack on social media during these fights, he would find ways to contact her again, creating new accounts or sending messages through his sister or acquaintances. This behavior was seen as disturbing and intrusive by Ashley's loved ones, but she continued to insist that Jack was a kind and compassionate person. In October 2018, Jack, who was 19 at the time, got a tattoo of Ashley's name on his arm when she was just 16. Her parents thought this display of affection was excessive and warned her to be cautious. However, Jack soon began exhibiting jealous and violent behavior. He would become angry if he suspected Ashley was talking to other guys, despite continuing to date other girls himself. He claimed Ashley was his favorite and swore his loyalty to her alone. This incident marked the beginning of a disturbing pattern of behavior. Ashley's friends and family grew increasingly concerned as Jack's behavior escalated. One day, Ashley called a friend who was at Jack's house, and he wouldn't let her leave. According to the friend who overheard the conversation, Ashley surprisingly remained calm, as if she was used to such situations. She simply asked Jack to stop being crazy. Ashley confided in her friends about the incident but didn't tell her parents. However, her friends strongly advised her to cut off all contact with Jack. Despite his history of fights and problematic behavior, Ashley and Jack continued to reconcile. At just 18 years old, Ashley had known Jack since her early teens, but she seemed unaware of the extent to which he had manipulated her from a young age. Ashley started working at fast food restaurants and department stores to save money for leisure activities. Her first purchase was a tablet, which allowed her to use social media more privately. She then began saving for a trip. During her senior year of high school, Ashley, a spiritual and inquisitive person, had a profound moment of insight after reading the Book of Mormon. This led her to start following the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Ashley graduated from Sighton High School in 2020. She wanted to experience university life fully, so she decided to take a year-long break before continuing her studies. In the first half of 2021, Ashley continued working in saving money. In April of that year, she was baptized into Mormonism. With her newfound independence and financial stability, Ashley decided to travel to the UK to meet Jack in person and celebrate his birthday with him. Despite her parents' and friends' concerns, Ashley was determined to make the trip, as she was of legal age and had her own savings. Ashley left Canada for the UK on November 12, 2021, on a 6-month tourist visa. This was her first time leaving her homeland, and she was thrilled. The next day, November 13, 2021, Ashley met Jack in person for the first time. On the same day, Ashley updated her profile picture to a photo of them together. At 22 years old, Jack looked significantly older than Ashley, who was 19. His numerous tattoos, including those on his face, created a striking contrast with Ashley's youthful appearance. During her stay in London, Ashley lived with Jack in his house, located in a public housing estate in northwest Chelmsford. The neighborhood had a questionable reputation, but they spent time exploring the nicer areas of the city in Essex. Jack seemed like the same charming and caring person Ashley had met online, often showering her with compliments and taking romantic selfies. However, Jack's behavior was inconsistent, and he could be cruel at times. Despite being together daily, Ashley's tourist visa prevented her from working, and Jack was unemployed, relying on benefits. Occasionally, his mother Tracy, who lived nearby, provided support. Throughout her trip, Ashley regularly posted photos and updates on social media, showcasing their happy moments and romantic experiences. The pictures often featured they embracing, highlighting their seemingly joyful relationship. Ashley kept in regular touch with her family through video calls, and everything seemed fine at first. They even adopted a new kitten, Winston, which was a positive addition to their lives. Nevertheless, over time, Jack started to become more withdrawn and isolated. Ashley's trip to England was supposed to be an exciting adventure, but it quickly turned into a restrictive and isolating experience. Her boyfriend, Jack, had lost interest in exploring the country and instead preferred to stay indoors, smoke, and play video games. As a result, Ashley's options for activities were severely limited, and she was forced to do only what Jack wanted. Before arriving in England, one of Ashley's friends from church had arranged for her to meet some American missionaries who would be in Chelmsford at the same time. Ashley was eager to connect with them, but Jack refused to let her attend church on Sundays. Despite this, she continued to secretly communicate with the missionaries through text messages, deleting the conversations to avoid Jack's suspicion. Ashley's new friends soon realized that Jack was controlling and possibly abusive. When she confided in them about her problems, Ashley admitted that she knew she deserved better, but she was trying to keep Jack happy. However, the abuse went beyond controlling her communication. About 6 weeks into their trip, Jack became violent when he discovered that Ashley had blocked 2 UK phone numbers. He mistakenly believed that the numbers belonged to other men, triggering a jealous outburst. In a disturbing text message to his mother, Jack revealed that he had physically abused Ashley. Ashley created a secret profile where she documented the bruises she had sustained. She confided in her sister Haley about the abuse, but warned her not to tell their mother, fearing that their family would turn against Jack. After Jack overdosed on anti-anxiety medication in late December 2021, Ashley was tasked with overseeing his medication as his caregiver. She kept this responsibility a secret from her mother and friends, but Haley inadvertently revealed the truth. Ashley's mother expressed concern and asked her to return home, but Ashley insisted on staying with Jack until he recovered. In early January 2022, another disturbing incident occurred. Jack smashed a beer glass over Ashley's head, leaving her in tears. While Jack forced her to clean up the broken glass, Ashley contacted her sister via video call, revealing the true extent of her situation. Jack was frantic, pacing back and forth, yelling, and grinding his teeth. His distress prompted Ashley to contact her sister, Haley, who urged her to return home. However, Haley's concerns fell on deaf ears. A brief period of calm followed, marked by Jack's 23rd birthday celebration with his family, where everyone put on a united front and pretended everything was fine. In an attempt to diffuse the tension, Jack's mother and stepfather organized a family vacation to a seaside town shortly after. The photos from the trip appeared perfect, showcasing a happy and tranquil Ashley, which brought relief to her parents, who remained unaware of the seriousness of the situation. In late January, an intense argument broke out, and Jack's behavior turned violent once again. He hit Ashley and threw a candle and a TV remote at her while she was video chatting with Haley, who was pleading with her to return home. Although Ashley had initially agreed, she ultimately decided to stay. Despite witnessing Jack's cruel nature, she clung to the hope that the charming person she once knew was still buried deep within him. Ashley was convinced that time, her love, or perhaps medical treatment could help Jack overcome his destructive tendencies, a sentiment that was echoed by her mother during subsequent conversations with Jack. Jack accused Ashley of cheating on him, physically abused her, and later apologized. Despite feeling guilty about his actions, Jack's behavior continued. The situation escalated on the morning of February 1, 2022, when Jack became angry with Ashley again. He accused her of abandoning him and seeing other people in secret. He demanded to see her phone and check her social media accounts to prove his allegations. Around 8 a.m., their neighbor Haley Borton Shaw heard Ashley's screams through the shared wall. Ashley soon showed up at Jack's doorstep, drawing attention to the distressing situation unfolding between them. Haley was shocked and Ashley appeared at her door, barefoot and crying, with a cut on her palm that was bleeding. Ashley explained that Jack had become enraged when he caught her looking at intimate photos of them. He had verbally abused her, physically attacked her, smashed her phone, and thrown her kitten against the wall. Despite Haley's concerns for Ashley's safety and fear that Jack might try to harm her, Ashley asked Haley not to call the police. Haley reluctantly agreed, but begged Ashley to see a doctor instead of returning to Jack's apartment. When Ashley refused, Haley decided to go and talk to Jack herself. During their conversation, Jack apologized for his actions and remained calm. Haley then left for a doctor's appointment around 9 a.m. Meanwhile, Jack's neighbor received a misdelivered package and brought it to his doorstep. Jack was hesitant to answer the door, which wasn't unusual since he was known to be an unfriendly and paranoid person. Around this time, Ashley called her family using Jack's cell phone, informing them of her situation. Ashley's mother was already aware of what was going on because Haley had previously confided in her about Jack's abusive behavior towards Ashley. Ashley's parents immediately bought her a return ticket for February 3rd to escape the abusive relationship. When she informed Jack, he offered to drive her to the airport. However, before she left, Ashley's mother made it clear that if Jack hurt her again, she would contact the police. She also advised Ashley to go straight to the airport if Jack assaulted her again. The conversation between Ashley and her family lasted for 3 hours before they ended the call. It was 11 a.m. in Chelmsford and 3 a.m. in Vernon when the call ended. A short time later, Jack sent a message to his mother, admitting to brutally beating Ashley again. During the assault, Ashley fell to the floor and possibly broke her arm. This violent incident occurred between 11:22 a.m. and 12:38 a.m. Ashley managed to send several messages to her family and friends using Jack's phone, but since it was nighttime, no one responded immediately. She also reached out to her friends at the church in Chelmsford, asking for help and describing the emergency. Unfortunately, these messages were not received until hours later, when it was too late to intervene. Between 12:38 and 12:45, Jack violently attacked Ashley, choking her until she lost consciousness. He then proceeded to the kitchen, retrieved an 11-centimeter knife, and repeatedly stabbed Ashley's chest and stomach around 100 times, ultimately ending her life. Following the attack, Jack updated his social media profile picture with a photo of himself and Ashley, accompanied by the caption, "Always mine." He also recorded a video message for Haley, expressing his love for Ashley, apologizing, and stating that he couldn't let her go, adding that his mental state was unstable. The video, which was never sent, showed Ashley's body next to him. Meanwhile, in Vernon, Ashley's family discovered a large number of messages from her on their phones. They immediately contacted Jamie Ashworth, a family friend from their Mormon community in Chelmsford. Jamie and Tyler Borden, another acquaintance from the church, went to Jack's apartment in England. After knocking on the door and receiving no response, they called the police and left the scene. In a desperate attempt to cover his tracks, Jack texted Ashley's family and friends, pretending to be her. However, the messages from loved ones continued to pour in, and Jack ignored them. Meanwhile, they were frantically trying to reach Ashley. Eventually, Jack called his sister Nadia and confessed to killing Ashley, even going so far as to show her the body. This disturbing conversation took place at approximately 4:13 p.m. When the police arrived at the apartment 10 minutes after Jamie's call, they found that the situation had already turned tragic. They arrested Jack, who was covered in blood, on the spot. He told the officers that he had experienced a psychotic episode and confessed to the crime. As a result, he was taken into custody and sent to Chelmsford Prison. His trial was scheduled for September 7, 2022, at Chelmsford Crown Court. The court's psychiatric examination concluded that Jack was mentally fit to stand trial. However, the evidence against him was irrefutable, including a video recording of him admitting to the crime. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, Jack immediately pleaded guilty. The judge then informed him that, given his confession, a life imprisonment sentence was inevitable. At the hearing, which took place under Judge Edward Murray at Chelmsford Crown Court, prosecutor Simon Spence detailed Jack's extensive criminal history, which dated back to his teenage years. During the hearing, Ashley's parents learned the disturbing truth about Jack. Jack had a history of run-ins with the law, including arrests for stalking, kidnapping, and violent assault. He had also been issued multiple restraining orders, including against his mother and former girlfriend. The revelation of Jack's extensive criminal record shocked and devastated Ashley's parents, who had never suspected the true nature of the man who had taken their daughter's life. During the hearing, the prosecution and defense discussed a letter written by Jack from prison, in which he apologized for his actions. The letter was later released to the media by Judge Murray, who cited the importance of transparency in the justice system. In the letter, Jack expressed regret to Ashley's family, especially her mother and sister Haley, acknowledging that nothing could undo the harm he had caused. Jack accepted responsibility for his actions and acknowledged that his mental state contributed to the tragedy. He also claimed to have previously discussed his mental health with Ashley. Ultimately, Jack was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 23 years. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore, the case of Lisa Holm. Lisa Holm was born on February 7, 1998, in the small Swedish town of Hu, where she grew up in a peaceful environment with her parents and older sister. Lisa was a kind, positive, and determined individual with a strong personality. She had already made up her mind to study architecture in Australia before completing her education. Lisa's love for travel was sparked by numerous trips with her parents to various countries, which also instilled in her a sense of independence from her teenage years. To earn her own money, she took on part-time jobs. In the summer of 2015, at the age of 17, Lisa landed her first job at a cafe located about 40 minutes from her home. Initially, her parents drove her to work, but soon her father gifted her a scooter. The scooter was a welcome gift, allowing her to commute to work independently. However, for the first few weeks, her father accompanied to ensure her safety, as she had limited experience driving on the roads. Lisa only works on weekends and her father always takes her to and from the cafe home. However, on June 7th, her father decided to let her drive herself. On that particular day, her parents visited her at work during lunch, when the cafe was very busy. They had a quick snack together before returning home. Later that day, at 6:23, Lisa sent her father a text saying she was leaving work. 3 minutes later, he received a call from her, but there was no answer when he picked up. He heard a soft voice over the phone, and the sound of a car door closing, leading him to believe that Lisa had accidentally dialed his number while talking to a coworker. Despite calling out her name several times, he got no response and eventually ended the call, expecting her to arrive home soon. However, as the minutes ticked by, Lisa failed to show up, causing her parents to grow increasingly worried. It was her first time driving the scooter alone, and her father was deeply concerned for her safety. He attempted to call her multiple times, but her phone was turned off. After a few more minutes of waiting, Lisa's father decided to drive along the route she would have taken, hoping to meet her along the way. He drove slowly, scanning the road for any sign of her, fearing she might have been in an accident. Despite his efforts, there was no sign of Lisa. The man arrived at the cafe where his daughter Lisa worked, but she wasn't there. However, her scooter was parked outside, which initially calmed his nerves. But upon closer inspection, he noticed her scooter keys were still in the ignition and her helmet was hanging from the handle. This discovery raised his concerns, as Lisa would never leave her scooter unattended. Around the same time, Lisa's mother contacted the cafe owner, hoping to get some information about her daughter's whereabouts. The cafe owner claimed to be unaware of Lisa's location and explained that she had spoken to her employees earlier, who said they were closing the cafe. The cafe owner then drove to the cafe and met up with Lisa's father. Together, they began searching the cafe and its surroundings. The cafe owner also enlisted the help of 4 friends who lived nearby. As the search continued, Lisa's mother and older sister checked the bus schedule, thinking it was possible that Lisa might have taken the bus instead of her scooter. They drove to the bus stop in their town, but unfortunately, Lisa was not on the bus. Despite their efforts, Lisa's family was still unable to find her, and their concerns continued to grow. Lisa's relatives quickly contacted the police after realizing she was missing. It was nearly 1 p.m. Police quickly conducted an extensive search. A crucial discovery was Lisa's scooter, which was left in the parking lot with the keys still in it, leading the police to suspect she might have been abducted. Abductions are extremely rare in Sweden, particularly in Lisa's rural hometown, so the police responded swiftly by deploying multiple search teams with dogs and having officers canvass every nearby house. As news of Lisa's disappearance spread, her classmates and friends took to social media to raise awareness and potentially gather witness accounts. Despite the overnight search, no progress was made. On Monday morning, the police publicly announced Lisa's disappearance and urged anyone with information to come forward. Around the same time, a man working at a barn across from the cafe found a motorcycle glove on the floor and reported it to the police. Detectives re-examined a barn previously inspected on the evening of Lisa's disappearance and discovered a glove. They presented the glove to Lisa's parents, who identified it as their daughter's, providing further evidence for the abduction theory. Police have stepped up the search by sending additional personnel and equipment to assist. By then, Lisa's disappearance had made national headlines, drawing hundreds of volunteers to the search. On Tuesday, the police received multiple leads. A group of volunteers searched a dirt road near the cafe, finding a phone case, receipt, ticket, and broken smartphone screen. After discovering these items, investigators confirmed that they all belonged to Lisa, so they concentrated the search in that area. Further investigation yielded additional parts of the broken smartphone, Lisa's ID, and more receipts. These items were all scattered along the same dirt road, increasing the police's certainty that Lisa was indeed a victim of abduction. The search for Lisa quickly gained a large amount of attention and support, with the number of people involved growing significantly each day. This case became the main news story in Sweden. Hundreds of volunteers from across the country flocked to participate in the search. A group of local volunteers specializing in finding missing people also participated in the search for Lisa. This made Lisa's search operation the largest in Sweden's modern history, with over 1,000 people involved. The police received numerous calls with potential leads. A woman reported a suspicious incident while she was jogging. The day before Lisa went missing, a man standing next to his car stopped her on the road and asked for directions to an unfamiliar city in English. When she tried to help him using Google Maps, the man asked her to get into his car to show the route on his navigator. The woman found this request suspicious and refused, continuing her jog instead. The woman shared a crucial detail with the police. She believed she had seen the man before, among the workers repairing a barn across the road from the cafe where Lisa was last seen. On the day Lisa went missing, her co-workers noticed something unusual. A witness saw two men standing across the road from the cafe, stared at the shop. Although the witness didn't think much of it at the time, but she shared this detail with the police after Lisa's disappearance. The following morning, Lisa's father and some friends searched the dirt road where her belongings were found. As they went further, they found Lisa's driver's license and house keys. It seemed that Lisa's abductor was throwing her belongings out of a vehicle. Despite all efforts, police and volunteers found no other clues in the area. That evening, a friend of Lisa's father was driving home from the search when he noticed that the police tape had been removed from the barn where Lisa's glove was found. He decided to re-examine the barn for clues. The friend retrieved a flashlight from his car as it was getting dark and searched the barn for several minutes. He soon spotted something shiny on the floor, which turned out to be a woman's earring, along with an identical earring nearby. The man reported his discovery to the police, who then showed the earrings to Lisa's parents. After confirming that the earrings belonged to their daughter, the police conducted a more thorough search of the storehouse. Initially, the detective explained that the primary focus on the first day of the search was finding Lisa herself. As a result, the barn was not thoroughly inspected, and small items like earrings may have been overlooked. This time, however, numerous forensic experts and search dogs were brought in to aid in the investigation. During the more extensive search, the police found a piece of evidence behind one of the walls that initially seemed unrelated to the case: human feces. Forensic experts, however, proposed an intriguing theory. According to them, in the aftermath of committing severe crimes, the perpetrator's body often releases a significant amount of adrenaline, sometimes leading to a sudden and uncontrollable urge to defecate. It's not uncommon for perpetrators to lose control of their bodily functions due to adrenaline during a crime. Given that Lisa's glove and earrings were discovered in the storehouse, investigators suspected that if she was abducted, the perpetrator might have taken her to the storehouse. They considered the possibility that the perpetrator, under the influence of adrenaline, might have relieved themselves and left behind feces. These feces were subsequently sent for DNA analysis. On Friday, the search area was expanded, and volunteers searched a farm approximately 2 miles from the cafe. The farm consisted of several large buildings with many employees, and the search team decided to inspect each one. Shortly after their arrival, 2 men appeared, communicating only in English as they didn't speak Swedish. One of them claimed that the police had already searched the farm, but the search team leader was skeptical. He believed he would have been informed if the police had indeed visited the farm, so he decided to proceed with the search. The 2 men observed the volunteers for a while before leaving. About an hour later, the search team discovered a pile of branches behind the cowshed. Upon closer inspection, they found a motorcycle helmet, jacket, and headphones hidden underneath. The police swiftly arrived at the scene and confirmed that the items found were indeed Lisa's. To gather more evidence, forensic experts were dispatched to the farm for a thorough investigation. Detectives also investigated the story about 2 suspicious men who attempted to deter volunteers from searching the farm. During their inquiry, the police revisited a report from a woman who encountered an English-speaking man while jogging. The police had a potential suspect in mind. In the early stages of the search, they had visited nearby houses, includes a house where 2 Lithuanian brothers live with their wives. What caught the police's attention was that these three individuals did not speak Swedish and communicated in English, making them the only people in the area who did not speak the local language. Additionally, the police had other indirect reasons to suspect them. The brothers worked at a barn near the cafe and the farm where Lisa's helmet was found, indicating they were familiar with these locations. Furthermore, the dirt road where Lisa's belongings were discovered led directly to their house. The police decided to question the three individuals since they were the prime suspects. Meanwhile, forensic experts and volunteers arrived at the farm to continue their inspection. Their attention was drawn to an old, neglected trailer surrounded by tall grass, which seemed abandoned for years. However, the flattened grass near the door suggested recent activity. Trapped grass under the door also indicated it had been opened recently. Upon opening the door, the forensic experts were met with a strong smell of decay. Inside, they found a changing room with multiple clothing lockers. All are locked except one. This led them to suspect that Lisa's body might be inside one of the locked lockers. However, they eventually found Lisa's body in an unlocked closet, hidden behind a pile of old clothes and rags. Despite the small space, the perpetrator managed to fit Lisa inside. A rope was around her neck, and her head was covered with a large amount of tape. Her pants were pulled down, and her shirt was pulled up. Medical experts concluded that Lisa's cause of death was strangulation, with no evidence of sexual assault. Her clothing was sent to the lab for further examination. As news of her body's discovery spread rapidly across the country, the case had already been making headlines in Sweden. The brutality of Lisa's murder shocked the entire nation, as such crimes were extremely rare in Sweden. A strange and disturbing discovery was made on YouTube the same day her body was discovered. A video titled 13, featuring a countdown timer, had been posted 13 days before the murder. What makes this video scarier is that it was uploaded to a channel called Lisa Home. News of the video spread quickly through the media, leaving many people stunned by the series of coincidences. Some speculated that the murder had been predicted, but it was later revealed that the channel name and video title had been changed after Lisa's body was discovered, explaining the eerie coincidence. This has raised concerns that this could be a joke or an attempt to create another conspiracy theory. Meanwhile, the police worked day and night tirelessly to catch Lisa's murderer and solve the case as quickly as possible. At the time of the discovery, investigators had already questioned two brothers and a woman, all of whom denied any involvement in the murder. The three individuals claimed to have been at home at the time of the abduction, providing alibis for one another. According to their accounts, the older brother, Natalia, was asleep in his room while his wife was preparing dinner, and the younger brother was using the computer. Natalia also stated that around 8 p.m., he woke up and went to a gas station to buy pizza and cigarettes. The police were skeptical of their alibis, as it was possible that the three were covering for each other. DNA samples were collected, but initially, no evidence directly linked any of them to the murder. However, this was short-lived. Forensic experts were working diligently in the storehouse and on the farm, utilizing all available resources, and soon their efforts paid off. In the storehouse, a small office-like room was discovered with a large window overlooking the cafe. Upon investigation, experts found 15 semen stains on the walls and floor near the window, suggesting someone had been standing there, watching the cafe employees, including Lisa, and engaging in self-gratification. The semen samples were sent to the lab for analysis, and DNA profiles were quickly extracted. All 15 samples matched the DNA of 35-year-old Natalia. Additionally, the feces found in the storehouse also belonged to him. In the adjacent room, previously used for storing cow's milk, forensic experts noticed a pipe about 2 feet above the floor with a thick layer of dust, except for a small strip. The size of this strip matched the rope used to strangle Lisa. Blood was also found on the pipe, and DNA analysis confirmed it belonged to Narigis. On the floor beneath the pipe, a piece of the same rope was discovered. Experts analyzed it and found 2 DNA profiles, Lisa's and Narigis's. This discovery was an important clue for the police. This indicates that the rope used to kill Lisa was related to Narigis. A crucial piece of evidence was discovered in the room where Lisa's body was found, a hair belonging to her. Further investigation revealed DNA traces from Narigis on Lisa's jacket, leading the police to believe she was killed in that location. Police have been studying the evidence and using it to piece together what might have happened. Narigis had been watching the cafe for some time and waited for an opportunity to strike. When Lisa was alone in the parking lot, he approached her, possibly asking for directions or using another tactic to gain her trust. He may have then asked her to get into his car to enter the route into the GPS system. Given Lisa's kind nature and willingness to help others, it's likely she agreed to help him. Once she was in the car, Narigis taped her mouth shut and drove her to the storehouse. There, he bound her with a rope. According to medical experts, the killer's adrenaline rush at the scene may have caused him to lose control of his bodily functions, resulting in defecation on the floor. After Lisa's death, the perpetrator placed her body in the car and drove to the farm, discarding her belongings along the way. He then hid her body in the trailer locker, covering it with old clothes. The entire ordeal, from abduction to hiding the body, took the perpetrator less than an hour. Narigis maintains his innocence despite mounting evidence against him. His wife and younger brother were released due to lack of evidence and promptly returned to their home country, Lithuania. The trial preparations were intense, with Narigis claiming his DNA was found at the crime scene because he had worked in the storehouse for a long time. He also provided an alibi, which was corroborated by his wife and brother, although their credibility was questionable. This defense may work in court, but the finding of Narigis' DNA on Lisa's clothing suggests direct contact on the day of the murder. Furthermore, a witness reported seeing Narigis' car near the cafe around the time of Lisa's abduction, contradicting his alibi. The car was seen driving back and forth between the cafe and the farm, while Narigis claimed to have been sleeping at home, according to his brother and wife. Months after Lisa's body was discovered, experts continued to analyze the evidence using advanced equipment. They found Narigis' DNA on nearly all of Lisa's clothing, including her underwear. Given the high-profile nature of the case, investigators sought additional clues to solidify the evidence against Narigis. As part of their investigation, they traveled to Lithuania to re-question Narigis' wife and brother. Narigis' wife maintained her initial alibi, claiming he was at home between 6 o'clock and 8 p.m. However, when detectives spoke with Narigis' younger brother, they finally obtained the information they needed. After being presented with the evidence against Narigis and the details of the crime, the younger brother revealed that Narigis was not at home that evening. According to the younger brother, Narigis returned around 7:30 p.m., covered in dirt, and immediately washed his clothes. When the police began questioning the residents and approached their house, Narigis instructed his brother to tell police he was home at the time of the crime. Narigis later explained that he was afraid of being wrongly accused due to his immigrant status and lack of alibi during the abduction. The younger brother initially believed Narigis innocent, but after learning about the evidence, he realized this wasn't true. A month after murder, a large crowd attended Lisa's funeral, far exceeding the church's capacity of 130 people. To accommodate the mourners, organizers set up benches and large screens outside, allowing everyone to watch the ceremony. 4 months later, the trial began. Narigis' lawyer argued that his client's DNA on Lisa's clothing could be explained by his work in the storehouse. However, the prosecution countered that this explanation didn't hold up, especially regarding Lisa's underwear. The only plausible way Narigis' DNA could have ended up on her underwear was through direct contact. the lawyer failed to provide any evidence supporting Narage's innocence. At one point, lawyers suggested an alternative theory that Narage's younger brother was the real killer. The lawyer failed to address the possibility of DNA manipulation during the trial, which lasted a month and resulted in Narage's being found guilty of murder. He was subsequently sentenced to life imprisonment in a high-security Swedish prison, which offered relatively comfortable living conditions. Narage's lawyer attempted to appeal the verdict but was unsuccessful. In 2017, Narage's made a surprising decision when he requested to be deported to a prison in Lithuania. Despite Lithuanian prisons being notoriously worse than Swedish ones, the court granted his request, probably because it would result in substantial cost savings for Swedish taxpayers. It did not take long to understand the reason behind Narage's decision. He appealed to the Lithuanian court and successfully had his sentence reduced from life to 15 years. However, this victory was short-lived, as the court later overturned the decision, reinstating his life sentence. Unfortunately for Narage's, he was now stuck in a Lithuanian prison, with no chance of returning to the more comfortable Swedish prison. In August 2022, 5 years after his initial imprisonment, Narage's has been transferred to another prison in Lithuania, where he encountered another life-threatening situation. During a block transfer, an inmate attacked Narage's with a shank, causing severe injuries that ultimately led to his death on the way to the hospital. Regarding Narage's wife, the question of her involvement in the crime remains unclear. Although police believe it is highly unlikely that she was directly involved in the abduction or murder, they do not rule out the possibility that she may have been aware of her husband's actions and provided a false alibi to help him. If she had been directly involved, experts would have likely found her DNA on Lisa's clothing or belongings. Additionally, Narage's younger brother has raised suspicions. Cafe employees reported seeing two men, likely Narage's and his younger brother, standing near the barn and watching the employees. However, the younger brother's DNA was not found in the barn or on Lisa's clothing, making his involvement in the murder unlikely. It is possible that the brothers were indeed observing the employees and discussing inappropriate topics, but only Narage's ultimately committed the crime. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jessica Bardwell. A team of detectives and FBI agents visited a remote ranch in Farmersville, North Texas, in the evening, and they immediately began searching the wooded area. They soon found a piece of metal covering something, and nearby there was an overwhelming smell of decay. Although the smell was unbearable, the officers were prepared for what they might find. When they removed the metal, they found a female body wrapped in a blue sheet, covered with a blanket, and 2 red and gold towels stained with blood. A pile of trash mixed with dirt served as a makeshift grave for the victim. It was clear that the perpetrator was inexperienced, as their attempts to hide the body only made it more noticeable. The condition of the body was terrible, having decomposed significantly under the scorching sun for a week. It took experts 7 days to officially identify the victim, and they did so by requesting dental records of the presumed victim. The investigation suggested that the discovered body belonged to 27-year-old Jessica Bardwell. The examination revealed that her death was the result of a crime, but the exact cause could not be determined due to the body's advanced decomposition. Notably, an anonymous informant provided crucial information that led to the discovery of the body, but their identity was not disclosed. Jessica Bardwell, a beloved daughter and friend, had seemingly vanished from the home she shared with her boyfriend, Jason Lowe. Her father, Gary, sensed trouble and set out from Mississippi to Texas to search for her, following his instincts that she was in danger. Let's start from the beginning. Gary had an exceptionally strong bond with his daughter Jessica. He recalled being deeply moved when she was born on September 10, 1988, in Pascagoula, Mississippi. Gary and Carla Bardwell were wonderful parents to Jessica and her older brother Brandon. The siblings got along well, with Brandon always protecting his little sister from bullies. Their grandmother, Kitty, who adored her grandchildren, would often visit and engage in fun activities with them, such as reading books, sharing life stories, and playing games. In short, they were a quintessential American family. Jessica was a happy and kind girl with a unique style. She dreamed of working in the beauty industry and opening her own salon. When she was 14, her parents got divorced, and she chose to live with her father, Gary, with whom she had a warm and trusting relationship. Gary, a firefighter, remarried Gina, who was an excellent homemaker and took good care of Jessica. As Jessica grew up, she wanted to be independent and moved to Orange Beach, Alabama, where she worked as a waitress at Cobalt Restaurant. She kept in touch with her father, who would visit her and take her boating and fishing. Jessica's friend and restaurant manager, Kimberly, admired the strong bond between Jessica and her father. At Cobalt, Jessica met Terry, and they started dating. However, she soon fell for Jason, a friend of Terry's, and left him for Jason. This new relationship turned her life around, and Jason promised to help her achieve her dreams. He got a job in Dallas, Texas, and Jessica followed him, without telling her father, afraid of disappointing him. In Dallas, Jessica searched for a new job and looked for a location for her salon. She and Jason planned to get married and buy a house. However, her relationship with her father suffered, and she stopped answering his calls. Gary was worried and eventually found out about Jason and Jessica's move. He tried to re-establish contact, but discovered that Jason controlled all communications. Months later, Jessica contacted her father, and he met Jason when they visited Pascagoula. Gary disliked Jason and tried to convince Jessica not to return to Texas, but she insisted on following her dreams. Despite Gary's concerns, Jessica seemed happy and didn't show any signs of distress. Gary's fatherly instincts kicked in after meeting his daughter's boyfriend, Jason, prompting him to write a song titled "Taken" for his daughter. Unfortunately, his concerns proved justified. 4 months after Jessica moved to Texas, she suddenly stopped responding to her family's calls. The final straw came on May 8th, when she failed to wish her mother and stepmother a happy Mother's Day, a gesture uncharacteristic of her. Gary sensed something was terribly wrong, especially since she missed a cherished family holiday. He immediately called Jason, who claimed he didn't know Jessica's whereabouts, citing their open relationship as the reason. However, Gary knew this was a lie, as Jason controlled every aspect of Jessica's life. The next morning, Gary drove to Texas, suspecting Jason's involvement in his daughter's disappearance. He messaged Jason, warning him that he would face consequences if Jessica wasn't home when he arrived. Upon reaching their apartment, Gary found no trace of Jessica or her belongings, but Jason continued to feign ignorance. Later, Kimberly shared disturbing details about Jessica's relationship with Jason. He had wasted money on drugs and entertainment, and his promises to help Jessica achieve her dreams had vanished. In private, Jason was rude and aggressive, leading to frequent conflicts with Jessica. With Jessica still missing, Gary filed a missing person report with the Richardson police. Detective Hiram Hall, a father of 3 daughters, led the investigation into her disappearance. The police spoke with Jason several times, inspecting the house, but found no trace of Jessica. Jason claimed he last saw Jessica on May 8th, leaving without explanation, possibly to visit her parents. However, investigators discovered that Jessica had actually sold her car 3 weeks earlier, a fact Jason knew about since he was present at the sale. This raised suspicions, prompting the police to interrogate him again on May 12th. During the investigation, police found cocaine in Jason's kitchen and a suspicious substance in his garage. The Audi car inside the garage had mud stains and a detached bumper. Although the car was empty, the police suspected Jessica might be inside. The smell of decomposition led them to examine the trunk, where they found blood stains. Jason claimed he got stuck in the mud while searching for Jessica, but he couldn't explain the blood in the car or the cocaine in his home. Given the circumstances, the case was reclassified as a homicide to prevent Jason from fleeing. Despite the lack of a body, the police charged Jason with homicide, and the search for Jessica continued. Eventually, her body was found, and the autopsy report revealed that she had been brutally discarded. A year later, Jason claimed the incident was an accident and hoped for the jury's understanding. However, the prosecution faced challenges in building their case, and the defense staged a mock trial that resulted in a not guilty verdict. After Jason revealed the location of Jessica's body, he received a shorter prison sentence, allowing her family to give her a dignified burial. Jessica's father, Gary, was consumed by grief and anger, seeking justice in a unique way. He took a photo of Jason, placed it on a stump, and hit it with a 12-pound sledgehammer, finding some small comfort in this form of emotional release. Gary struggled to cope with his loss, feeling guilty for not persuading Jessica to stay away from her controlling boyfriend, Jason. He had hoped she would break up with him, but she had chosen to give him another chance instead. During the trial, Gary replayed their last conversations in his mind, including a call from Jessica when she admitted he was right about Jason after an argument. Although she had briefly found shelter with a friend, she had returned to Jason the next day. Gary had reluctantly accepted her decision, a choice he would later regret deeply. When Mr. Bardwell arrived in Texas, he was determined to seek justice. During her opening statement, prosecutor Cynthia Walker described Jason as a complex person who few people wanted to associate with due to his history of substance abuse, which often triggered violent outbursts. It's possible that Jessica was a victim of one such episode. Prosecutor Wes Wynn called upon Jason's former girlfriends to testify. They corroborated the prosecution's claims, sharing their own fears of Jason's aggression, which was fueled by jealousy. Like Jessica, Jason had isolated them from their loved ones and exhibited manipulative and deceitful behavior. These traits ultimately led each of them to end their relationships with him, which required careful planning and caution. However, Jason was able to present himself as a superior individual to many people, deceiving them about his true nature. In response to the allegations, Jason revealed that he had started using drugs at the age of 13, influenced by his friends, which led to addiction. Despite his struggles, he managed to earn multiple degrees and secure a job with a well-known global company, demonstrating his determination to not let his addiction define him. Jason admitted to planning to fulfill Jessica's dream of building a family together, motivated by his love for her. However, the prosecution presented a different image of Jason, contradicting his claims. The investigation revealed that Jessica died between May 1st and May 3rd, likely on the day she argued with her neighbors, the Jordans, and was last seen alive. After the argument, Jason moved Jessica's body to the garage and placed it in the trunk of his car, where it stayed for several days. Forensic evidence confirmed that the blood found in the Audi belonged to Jessica. Jason then transported her body to a remote farm and hid it in the nearby woods. The sheet used to wrap the body was later found to be part of Jessica's bedding set, which Jason still had in his home, despite Jessica's death and her body decomposing in the car. After Jessica's death, the accused continued to see multiple women, and his phone contained evidence of this, including flirtatious messages and intimate photos that he had sent to them before meeting them at his apartment. Jason claimed that he was trying to distract himself from his emotional pain and guilty feelings by using substances, which he believed made dealing with reality easier. The investigation discovered Jason's presence at Jessica's time of death through a clever tactic. Because Jason had consistently denied any involvement, detectives asked Tommy Jordan, someone who knew Jason, to have a conversation with him while being monitored. During this conversation, Jason finally admitted to making a terrible mistake with Jessica, expressing guilt and remorse, although he only acknowledged culpability for criminal negligence. Jason's statement to the police was seen as a confession, and they realized they had caught him. Jason made a deal with the prosecution and revealed the location of Jessica's body. At the trial, he finally told his side of the story. According to Jason, he and Jessica had taken libido-enhancing pills that evening and got intimate in the shower. During the shower, Jason slipped and Jessica fell, hitting her head on the bathtub. She complained of feeling hot and dizzy and sat down. Jason claimed he offered to call an ambulance, but Jessica refused, saying she just needed to rest and sleep. However, the next morning, Jason found her lying on his chest, unconscious and not breathing. Despite his attempts to revive her, Jessica was dead. Scared of being accused of murder, Jason hesitated to call the police and decided to take matters into his own hands. He initially left the body in his car and later hid it on a remote farm, carelessly dumping her in a pile of trash without a proper burial. However, Jason's story was not believable due to his questionable character and the medical examination findings. The autopsy revealed that Jessica had suffered severe head injuries that couldn't have resulted from just falling in the shower, indicating that Jason had attempted to cover up evidence of physical abuse. As a result, his entire story was proven to be a fabrication. After 6 hours of deliberation, the jury found Jason guilty. Judge Scott Becker sentenced Jason Lowe to 50 years in prison, a reduced term due to a plea deal with the prosecution. Jason won't be eligible for parole until at least 2041. At the sentencing, Gary, Jessica's father, felt relieved that justice had been served, but was disturbed by Jason's lack of remorse. 2 of Jason's ex-girlfriends, including Chrissy Chambers, were present at the sentencing. Chambers expressed sympathy for Jessica, warning her to get out of the relationship if she could. Even now, Jason maintains his innocence, claiming the homicide was an accident. Unfortunately, Jessica didn't recognize Jason's true nature until it was too late. She had grown up with a positive male role model in her father Gary, and didn't realize that some men can be deceitful and violent. This tragic story serves as a warning to women to prioritize their own safety, freedom, and well-being, lest they suffer a devastating fate, not just for themselves, but for their loved ones. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Zoe Nelson. Zoe Nelson was born on August 13, 1992, in Wishaw, Scotland. At the age of 18, she lived with her mother, stepfather, and 2 younger sisters, including 16-year-old Laura Ann, in New Mains, a village on the eastern edge of Wishaw, about 18 miles southeast of Glasgow. Zoe attended Motherwell College, where she was a popular student with many friends. A complicated romantic situation developed when both Zoe and her sister Laura Ann became involved with the same 20-year-old man, Robert Bain, who lived with his grandparents about a mile from the Nelson family home. Tensions between the sisters increased, leading to conflicts. On May 22, 2010, Zoe met Robert outside her home, which upset Laura Ann. When Laura Ann saw this, she rushed out of the house to confront Zoe. Their 40-year-old mother, Mary Ann Nelson, witnessed the fight between her daughters. According to Mary Ann, Laura Ann tried to provoke Zoe by flicking her hair and attempted to slap her face, leading to a physical altercation at the end of the driveway. Mary Ann intervened, breaking up the fight and telling the sisters to leave and not come back. Zoe complied with her mother's order and never returned home. At around 11 p.m. that same day, some locals spotted someone setting a fire in the wooded area known as Monkey Hill. The smell of smoke drifted to nearby homes, but at the time, no one paid much attention. Zoe's aunt, 35-year-old Shirley Nelson, later remembered that night, describing how she was sitting in her garden in New Mains after finishing her second shift at work. She and her sister sat in the back of the house until about 11 p.m. when it got cooler and they smelled smoke. However, they didn't think anything of it because of the warm weather. The next day, Zoe's family tried to contact her, but no one answered. On the afternoon of May 23rd, Stuart Bell, a 45-year-old government employee from Wishaw, rode his motorcycle into a nearby wooded area and saw something strange. At first, he thought it was a charred tailor's dummy, but upon closer inspection, he realized it was a human body that had been badly damaged in a fire. He immediately went home to call the police, who arrived 15 to 20 minutes later. When the police arrived, they sealed off the area, as nothing so horrific had ever occurred there before. News of the body's discovery quickly spread, and when Zoe's family learned of it, her mother, Marianne Nelson, went to the police to report her daughter's disappearance, which had happened after they had fought, and Marianne told Zoe not to come home. The police soon broke the devastating news to the Nelson family. Zoe had fallen victim to a crime. Marianne issued a statement through the police, describing Zoe as a typical popular 17-year-old with a strong presence in the local community and many friends. In just a couple of months, she would have turned 18. Her family is deeply distraught over her loss. Zoe's stepfather, Daniel, and her sisters, Laura Ann and Ashley, are heartbroken about what happened, and the family is urging anyone with information to come forward and assist the police in their investigation. Hugh Logan, the principal of Motherwell College, where Zoe studied vehicle body repair, expressed shock on behalf of the college community upon learning the dreadful news of her death. He described Zoe as a very popular student and conveyed that the college's thoughts are with her family and friends. A thorough investigation of the scene spanned several days, with a team of at least 50 police officers working on the case. Detective Derek Robertson, part of the main investigation team, lamented the loss of Zoe's young life and vowed that his officers would not rest until the perpetrator was caught. He urged anyone who saw Zoe between 5 p.m. and 11:20 p.m. on Saturday night to come forward and assist the investigation. Robertson noted that, given the area's popularity on the hottest day of the year, numerous people would have been taking shortcuts and sunbathing, and that the police were particularly interested in speaking with those who may have used the dirt trails, including one that crossed near the location where Zoe's body was found. Zoe was about 5 feet 6 inches tall, with a heavy build and collar-length brown hair. At the time she went missing, she was wearing gray tracksuit bottoms, a white long-sleeved top, and black Nike trainers. The detectives have been reviewing CCTV footage, phone records, and computer data, as well as conducting door-to-door inquiries and speaking to Zoe's friends and family to try to recreate her last movements on May 26th. The police released video footage from a local shop where Zoe was seen just hours before she died. These small details were crucial to the investigation, as they helped the police trace Zoe's movements and ultimately led to the arrest of the person responsible for her death. After examining the crime scene, investigators found a red plastic sombrero-shaped cap from a Sierra Silver tequila bottle near the body and an empty bottle of the same brand on the other side of a small walkway nearby. Due to the body being exposed to fire for approximately 7 hours, forensic experts faced limitations in determining the exact cause of death. The body was discovered with a partially melted plastic bag covering most of the face, leading pathologists to conclude that asphyxiation was the most likely cause of death. Despite the damage, the palm of the right hand remained relatively intact, allowing 2 DNA samples to be collected, one matching Zoe Nelson herself, and the other belonging to an unidentified male. Ultimately, the official cause of death was recorded as undetermined. By May 28th, police had gathered several witness statements that provided a disturbing account of Zoe's last days. One witness reported seeing Zoe with a heavily intoxicated and aggressive man at around 5:15 p.m. on May 22nd, who was hitting her on the head. Another witness claimed to have seen Zoe walking with a man with a tattooed face near his home in New Mains. A third witness described seeing Zoe with a similar-looking man in New Mains, who appeared angry, hit a lamppost, and threatened to take someone's life that night. Multiple witnesses came forward, all describing the same young man, 20-year-old Robert Bain. Notably, Robert Bain had a prior criminal record despite his youth. He had served 18 months in prison for robbery and was released just 7 weeks before Zoe's death. Additionally, he had been arrested 4 times for possessing illegal substances, though as a juvenile, he faced minimal consequences. Investigators started to view Robert Bain as a prime suspect in the case. Before they could take further action, Bain surprisingly turned up at the police station in Wishaw around 5:50 p.m. on May 28th. He was clearly intoxicated, slurring his words, and wanted to make a statement. Bain claimed that a few days prior, he had been in Motherwell, where he got on a bus to return home. During the journey, he said, a man named Stuart Campbell boarded the same bus. Bain alleged that he approached Campbell and asked if he had been with Zoe on the previous Saturday night. According to Bain, Campbell's response was incriminating. Yes, I took her life. This was the first mention of Stuart Campbell's name during the entire investigation, whereas Robert Bain's name had come up repeatedly. As a result, the police arrested Bain on the same day. A strong justification for Robert Bain's arrest would emerge during his trial. At the time of his arrest, Bain claimed to have last seen Zoe on the morning in May. However, forensic tests revealed incriminating evidence against him. A DNA sample from Zoe Nelson's hand revealed not only her own DNA, but also traces of another person's DNA, which matched part of Bain's DNA profile. Additionally, DNA evidence found on a tequila bottle and its cap, discovered near Zoe's body, matched both Zoe Nelson and Robert Bain. According to the forensic expert, this suggested that both individuals had consumed from the bottle and then replaced the cap. Expert Marie Campbell stated that the scientific findings indicated that Robert Bain's DNA was deposited between Zoe Nelson's fingers and on her right palm. The chances of the DNA found on the red plastic sombrero lid belonging to anyone other than Robert Bain were an astonishing 10 million to 1. Robert Bain was accused of being involved in Zoe Nelson's death due to multiple eyewitness accounts and DNA evidence. Despite this, he pleaded not guilty and acted defiantly, even confronting one of the investigators. He also denied an earlier alleged assault on Zoe, where a witness claimed he struck her on the head with his fist. Hundreds attended Zoe Nelson's funeral at Courtness Memorial Church on June 16, 2010. She was laid to rest at Campus Nathan Cemetery. Over 200 mourners, including her mother, sisters, and grandmother, gathered to pay their respects. Reverend Graham Rayburn led the service, noting the large turnout as a testament to Zoe's significant impact. He described her as a happy, cheerful teenager with a big heart who loved fast cars and rangers. Sadly, she never met her newborn nephew or got to contact her biological father. On March 1, 2011, Robert Bain's trial began, during which he maintained his innocence. Testifying in court, Zoe Nelson's teenage friends recalled a conversation they had with her a week before her death, in which she attributed her scratches and bruises to a fight with Robert Bain. According to her friends, Zoe described Bain as bossy, unstable, and prone to anger over minor issues. He also controlled her social circle, dictating which friends she could see. Although Zoe and Bain's relationship was relatively short-lived, given he had only been out of prison for 2 months, he exerted significant influence over her and also pursued a relationship with her 16-year-old sister, Laura Ann. Notably, Laura Ann was aware of her sister's death 5 days before the body was discovered by a passerby, but kept this secret until the trial, where it was revealed that Bain had taken Laura Ann to the location of Zoe's body. Laura Ann, who testified from behind a screen to avoid seeing Bain, recounted that on May 23rd, the day after her argument with Zoe, she visited Bain's address to return some clothes. Upon arrival, she observed that Robert seemed nervous and had been consuming vodka. They soon left the house, with Bain claiming he wanted to show her something. According to Laura Ann, he led her to the location where Zoe's body lay. Recognizing the ranger's tattoo on her arm, Laura Ann identified the body as her sister. During court questioning, Laura Ann stated that Bain had confessed to hitting Zoe, and when Zoe attempted to retaliate, he lost control and took her life. Bain then allegedly used gasoline in an attempt to eliminate any evidence of the crime. Laura Ann confessed to walking with Bain on the day following the discovery of the body. Afterwards, she visited his home, spending time in his bedroom, where they listened to music together. She also had a phone conversation with him that lasted around an hour. A friend of Laura Ann, who testified in court, recalled that Laura Ann seemed happy and normal, despite knowing her sister was dead. When questioned about why she didn't reveal everything to the police during her initial interrogation, Laura Ann explained that she was afraid that if she told them, her mother wouldn't believe her and would think she was responsible for Zoe's death. The jury heard testimony from Laura Ann Nelson, who stated that Robert Bain had threatened her, saying she would face the same consequences as Zoe if she told anyone about his actions. On March 25, 2011, a jury of 7 men and 7 women delivered a unanimous guilty verdict. As the verdict was read, Bain became violent, requiring physical restraint. Handcuffed, he jumped up in the dock, struggling with security officers and police, and headbutting one of them. He also shouted insults and threats at Zoe Nelson's family, forcing the courtroom to be cleared while order was restored. After a 20-minute adjournment, Judge Lady Dorian agreed to proceed with the trial in Bain's absence. In a separate matter, Robert Bain was acquitted of stealing alcohol from an Asda store in New Mains on May 22nd, as well as disorderly conduct related to yelling, cursing, and waving a knife in various streets in Wishaw on the same day. Bain was also acquitted of stealing Zoe's cell phone, which was found in the woods, and of threatening a police officer during an interview at the Motherwell police station on May 28th. On April 27, 2011, Robert Bain was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 20 years for taking the life of Zoe Nelson. He received another 6 years for the obstruction of justice charge, and both sentences were to be served concurrently. The judge, Lady Dorian, described the crime as appalling and shocking. On Christmas Eve 2022, 29-year-old Laura Ann Nelson was found dead in her apartment after not being heard from for days. She was left with 2 children, ages 3 and 4. Her death was not considered criminal, as she had health problems, namely type 1 diabetes. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The chilling case of Grace Millane. Grace Emmy Rose Millane was born on December 2, 1996, in Wickford, Essex, to her parents Gillian and David Millane. She was the youngest of her 3 siblings and was known to be a lovely, outgoing, fun-loving, and family-oriented daughter who loved creativity and the arts. Given the family's close bond, Grace maintained daily contact with her siblings and parents, even while she had been away at the University of Lincoln, where she studied advertising and marketing. In 2018, 21-year-old Grace Millane finally graduated with a bachelor's degree in advertising and marketing. Like most young people around that age, Grace decided that she would celebrate the end of her university education with a gap year before she settled down into a steady career. She decided to take a year out to travel South America before heading to New Zealand to tour there. She set out for a 10-month solo adventure in October 2018, initially visiting Peru before setting off for South America on November 19th. Grace arrived in New Zealand and checked into the base backpackers hostel in Auckland, ready for a 2-week stay traveling around the Upper North Island. It was in New Zealand that Grace met up with her Tinder match, a 28-year-old man named Jesse Kempson, on December 1st, 2018. Jesse Kempson was born on December 28, 1991, in Lower Hutt, New Zealand, but he grew up in Wellington. His parents separated when he was young, and for a time, he was raised by his grandparents. He moved to Australia with his mother as a teenager, but by 2016, he had returned to New Zealand and was living in a boarding house in Wellington. Little did Grace know that Jesse had a more sinister side to him. Jesse was known to be a very charming lad, and he used that to his advantage to manipulate people. He couldn't hold a job or accommodation because of his compulsive lies. On one occasion, Jesse lied to his former landlord that he was a professional softball player, freshly signed up by New Zealand's national softball team, the Black Sox, and claimed that his contract money was coming so that he could pay for rent. This went on for 2 months, only for the landlord to find out from the Black Sox management that nobody knew who he was. Unfortunately, the landlord found out also that he fled to another place without his knowledge, leaving him more than $1,700 out of pocket. At times, he had also claimed to have a bachelor's degree in international law, come from a family of millionaires who were looking to buy a top Oakland restaurant, and have contacts within Immigration New Zealand, and many other lies he mentioned to people. In reality, Jesse was nothing more than a fantasist who could only impress people with exaggerated stories. His former roommates in a boarding house in Green Lane found him unsettling and untrustworthy before he eventually moved into City Life apartments. On another occasion, a woman he lived with claimed he stole money from her home and fled, leaving his City Life landlord thousands of dollars short after Jesse lied that he got paid monthly and still failed to make rent payments. Jesse remained an enigma to many, fabricating his way through life and seemingly evading consequences repeatedly. Back in the hostel where Grace was staying, she was happily conversing with Jesse. The unsuspecting 21-year-old Grace was charmed by Jesse, even sending a text to her close friend Anna back home, telling her that she clicked with the guy. As it was a Saturday and her 22nd birthday was the next day, Grace didn't want to spend it alone and decided to go out to celebrate. She decided to meet up with Jesse Kempson, as he lived 5 minutes down the road from where Grace was staying, and they needed to get to know each other better. On the day the Tinder matches were supposed to meet, Grace got ready for her big night out and felt nothing but excitement and optimism for the evening ahead. Grace left the base backpackers hostel in Auckland at 6 p.m. and went into the city center streets, dressed in a black dress and carrying a small handbag, unaware of the tragic turn of events that was about to unfold. The evening appeared to be going well, and the two visited a room with blue-colored walls before leaving together around 9:30 p.m. The next day was Grace's 22nd birthday, but she was not responding to the birthday wishes from her family and friends. This silence caused concern and panic, especially among her family members. It was unusual for Grace, as she would regularly update her family about her trip, bombarding them with details and pictures of her adventures. Grace's parents contacted the Auckland police and reported her as missing on December 5th. The detectives did not initially suspect any foul play, as they learned that Grace had not returned to the hostel on the night of December 1st and thought that perhaps she was staying with some new friends. It did not take long to trace Grace's whereabouts on the night she disappeared due to the extensive network of CCTV cameras around the city, and the mysterious man she was seen with that night was identified as Jesse Kempson. On the night Jesse was going to meet Grace, he dropped by a local bar, the Bluestone Room, right next to the City Life Hotel where he was living. Jesse was observed consuming 4 bottles of beer half an hour before their scheduled meeting with Grace, appearing solitary in a drinking establishment away from the main commercial area of Milan. Meanwhile, Grace was already at the base of the Sky Tower, the location they had agreed to meet, demonstrating her eagerness to potentially commence a holiday romance. The Sky Tower is very well known in New Zealand's biggest city and is one of the most obvious icons on the city's skyline, visible for miles around, and the focus of many events. Most importantly, it is highly public, and the sort of location where Grace would have felt safer to meet someone. As Jesse arrived, the pair recognized each other almost immediately, and he hugged her as she smiled and moved towards him. Their first stop was a burger restaurant and bar on the first floor of the adjacent Sky City complex. Their entire time together at Sky City was caught on camera, and the footage showed them chatting as they went up on an escalator to Andy's Burger and Bar, where they ordered cocktails from a barman and moved on to a table to talk. An hour and a half later, they left the bar and headed back outside and onto a restaurant less than a block away, the Mexican Cafe. After consuming 2 jugs of margarita and 1 of sangria, they left the cafe and headed to the Blue Stone room where he had been drinking alone earlier. At 8:40 p.m., Jesse put his hand behind Grace's head and pulled it towards his, kissing her for a second or so. Over the next hour, they kissed several times more, only stopping briefly while Kempson walked out of shot, and Grace checked her phone, as it turned out, sending her final message to her friend Anna. Then, Grace also walked out of the shot. Jesse had gone onto his phone to post a message on her Facebook profile picture, saying she was beautiful and very radiant, an act that led the detectives right to him. Soon after 9:30 p.m., the footage showed them leaving and heading to the lobby of the City Life Hotel, where they entered the lift. Jesse searched for his keycard as they made their way towards room 308. What happened in room 308 after the couple arrived is unknown, apart from the fact that Jesse murdered Grace. By 1:30 a.m., Grace was found dead inside the room. It is clear that Grace never left the building, and Jesse did not call emergency services or even ask for help when she died. After Grace's death, Jesse carried out several internet searches, which indicated not only how unconcerned he was about her death, but how he was actively planning to conceal it. Using his mobile phone, he searched for information on the most intense fires and the ranges of waiter care. He also searched for the location where he would later try to bury Grace in a shallow grave. The perpetrator then browsed a website to watch videos. Jesse also took 7 intimate photographs of Grace's dead body, including close-ups, manipulating her body to get the shots he wanted. The following morning, with Grace still lying dead in room 308, he texted another woman he had met on Tinder, trying to arrange a date for later that day. Shortly after, he was again captured on CCTV footage, moving from his room to a leisure store to purchase a suitcase, and then to a supermarket to acquire some cleaning supplies. He then rented a red Toyota hatchback vehicle, and as Grace lay deceased in his hotel room, he departed in the afternoon to meet up with the woman he had been exchanging text messages with earlier in the day at a bar named Rory, located in the fashionable Ponsonby suburb. Soon after meeting him at the Rory bar, he told her that all his friends were police officers, and that his closest friend was coming to New Zealand to be a Crown prosecutor. When they discussed a murder trial she had once attended, he told her it was crazy how people can make one wrong move and go to jail for the rest of their lives. He then went on to say that he had heard about a guy who asked his girlfriend to have rough sex, but it had gone wrong and she had died in the process, which made the woman uncomfortable. Jesse continued with his lies for the rest of the conversation, and she became increasingly uneasy. When she left the bar, despite her anxiety, Jesse later texted her asking for another date, which she turned down. After he returned to his room around 5:45 p.m. on December 2nd, he hired a rug doctor machine to thoroughly clean the carpet, telling the shopkeeper he needed it to remove a red wine stain. Later, he parked his rental car outside the hotel, retrieved a trolley from the reception, went upstairs, and came back with the trolley, which was now carrying 2 large suitcases, one of which matched the one he had purchased earlier. He loaded the cases into the car and moved it to a nearby car park. The silver suitcase contained Grace's body, while the second case was used as a cover to avoid suspicion. Throughout the day, the CCTV revealed he changed his clothes repeatedly. Early the next day, at around 6:15 a.m., Jesse was spotted leaving the hotel and driving off in his car, stopping only to buy a shovel at a store out of town. By that time, Grace's parents were concerned after she did not reply to birthday wishes they sent her. 3 days later, Grace was reported missing by her parents, and a huge hunt got underway on the 7th of December 2018. Grace's father, David Mullane, arrived in New Zealand to make an emotional appeal for any information about his daughter's disappearance. Jesse had been identified by a detective as a suspect after Grace's mother had noticed that he had left a message on her Facebook page at 9:29 p.m. on the 1st of December, just 11 minutes before they left the Blue Stone room and went to his room. Jesse was interrogated for the first time by Detective Diana Levinson. He claimed that he had met Grace, but they parted at 10 p.m. on Saturday, and that was the last time he saw her. In the meantime, the detectives had acquired the CCTV footage from the hotel, which proved he was lying. By the time of his second interview, he had no choice but to admit to killing Grace, relying instead on the excuse that she had died during sex by accident after she asked him to choke her in an attempt to make sex more pleasurable. Following the interview, he was arrested and took officers to Grace's body. Grace's body was found on the 9th of December at around 4 p.m. She had been buried off Scenic Drive in the Waiheke Care Rangers Regional Park, and a post-mortem examination was done on the 10th of December. The autopsy determined that Grace had been strangled, and the bruises on her body were consistent with being restrained. The murder trial began in Auckland on November 4, 2019. Kempson attempted to explain Grace's death as being accidental after a rough encounter had gone wrong, but the jury rejected his claim and found him guilty. Jesse Kempson was convicted of murder on the 22nd of November 2019, when he was 28 years old. During his trial, he was described as a sociopath who made some of the women he met or communicated with on Tinder highly uncomfortable. It later emerged that he took another British tourist out on a Tinder date before bringing her back to his Auckland motel room 8 months before he met Grace. Jesse sexually assaulted the tourist, then 21, while she lay on the bed crying and frozen with fear after she refused to have sex with him. She kept the attack secret until she recognized Jesse from media coverage the day he was charged with Grace's murder. Another of the women he communicated with on the internet, who was wary of meeting him, shared a series of messages in which he detailed his sexual preferences and admitted to her why he enjoyed doing what he did. It was speculated that Jesse's desire for domination was the underlying factor that led to Grace's tragic demise. In another trial, he was convicted of terrorizing his former girlfriend over months, subjecting her to violent assaults, threatening her with a butcher's knife, and forcing her into humiliating acts after telling her he had been sent by the CIA to kill her. Jesse was unwilling to accept what he had done and showed no remorse. On the 21st of February 2020, Jesse was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years. Grace's story has raised awareness about the importance of safety for travelers, especially young women exploring the world. It has sparked initiatives and support networks to empower individuals and enhance safety measures. As we remember Grace, we honor her memory by advocating for safer travel experiences and raising awareness about the risks that travelers may face. Her legacy serves as a reminder that no one should experience harm while exploring the world. In the end, Grace Emmy Rose Mullane's legacy will be one of remembrance and hope. May her memory inspire us to continue working towards a world where travel is safe and where every individual, no matter where they are, is free from harm and can pursue their dreams. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Siobhan McLaughlin. On February 28, 2006, McLaughlin was found deceased in a locked bedroom at her residence in Nakanishi Goldstown, Dublin 14. At first, it appeared as if she had tragically taken her own life, but within hours, the members of the McLaughlin family were convinced that she had been brutally murdered. Siobhan was one of 8 children, 7 girls and 1 boy, born to her parents, Oon and Deja McLaughlin. Siobhan worked as a chef in the canteen of an electrical firm. In 1989, at the age of 21, she met a man named Brian Carney, who was 31 years old. Brian worked as an electrical engineer for the same firm, which was a very good job. Siobhan lived in an apartment while Brian lived with his toddler daughter, Aisling, from a previous relationship. Brian's wife and the mother of his child had passed away from natural causes a few years before Siobhan and him met. Brian was raising his daughter alone. Eventually, Siobhan would move in with Brian and his daughter. They renovated this house and then decided to sell it. Siobhan decided to set up her own catering business, as she had trained at the Shelburne Hotel, and she was ahead of her time when it came to food. She used ingredients that were uncommon in Ireland during the 90s, but would now be considered standard. The era of meat and potatoes had passed. Brian was not only an electrical engineer, but he also owned a music shop called Music City, which he sold in 2005. In 1995, the couple got engaged but then split up. They did keep in touch with each other over the years, meeting for dinner every few months. While they were separated, Brian never entered into any other relationship, and eventually they reconciled. In January 2002, they got married, and Siobhan was expecting a baby. Their son, Daniel, was born 6 months later. That same year, Brian and Siobhan traveled to Spain on holidays, with the prospect of buying a boat. But while there, they came across a 200-year-old merchant's mansion on the island of Mallorca in Spain. They bought it and converted it into a boutique hotel. It had 6 luxury bedrooms and a heated outdoor pool. The couple bought the property for €2.5 million and oversaw most of the renovations themselves. Siobhan was a visionary, traveling from place to place, collecting pieces for the hotel, along with her impeccable taste and furnishings. Siobhan's culinary skills were what would make the hotel a success. The hotel opened in January 2003, and Siobhan's barbecues quickly became a highlight of guest stays and were popular among the locals. Siobhan and Brian would regularly travel back and forth between Mallorca and Ireland. However, during the holiday season, which spanned from March to December, Brian would travel back to Ireland more frequently. This meant that Siobhan was left in charge of running the business in Mallorca while also raising their son, Daniel. Later, people who knew Siobhan would say that towards the end, they could see that she was not happy and was exhausted from doing everything. They felt there was an atmosphere of tension when Brian was around. However, because Javon's family was so large, Siobhan would frequently receive visits from one or a few of them, and she was very glad to see them. These visits seemed to lift her spirits and put a pep in her step. Siobhan was very independent, but she also greatly valued the closeness of her family. A few years into owning the property in Spain, Brian and Siobhan decided to build a new house beside their property in Dublin, hoping to sell the original house and move into the new house or rent out either of the properties. Siobhan came home to Dublin for the break. In 2006, she consulted a lawyer about legally separating and what she had to do. The solicitor advised her to keep a diary of the goings-on between herself and Brian. She enrolled their son Daniel in a local school and was going to approach Brian about her and their son moving into the new house that was being built next door. While Siobhan loved what she had built out there, she was very much on her own, overworked and trying to raise their son with no family around her for support. On the morning of Tuesday, the 28th of February 2006, it was Brian's birthday. Siobhan's sister Niamh arrived at Siobhan's house as usual. While she normally arrived at 9 a.m. to leave her car in the driveway and catch the bus into the city, this morning she did not arrive until 9:30 a.m. As she had her own key, she let herself into the house and found 3-year-old Daniel wandering around on his own downstairs. Niamh then went upstairs to Siobhan's bedroom door and found it was locked. There was no reply when she called her name. Niamh then called her father and mother and informed them of the situation. When the father arrived, he broke down the door and found Siobhan lying in the bedroom near the ensuite door. Owen reached down and touched Siobhan on the head and then the leg and found she was cold. He knew then that his beloved daughter was dead. She was only 38 years old. The key to the bedroom was found on the floor, just inches away from the main bedroom door, and it appeared to have been pushed under. Owen immediately contacted the Garda, Irish police, When they arrived and examined the scene, they felt it was staged. Photos had been placed around Siobhan, almost like a shrine. A cord was partially wrapped around Siobhan, and the cord had been broken. When the forensic team arrived and examined the scene, they found indentations at the top of the ensuite door, and the other part of the vacuum cord was wrapped around the door handle on the inside of the door, making it look like she had tried to hang herself. It later emerged in court that the cord would have snapped within 5 seconds due to Siobhan's weight, and she would have had to have been at least 6 inches off the ground. These two factors, combined with other evidence, indicated that it was impossible for Siobhan to have taken her own life. It was also determined that Siobhan had been dead for a few hours, as rigor mortis had already set in. The Garda imposed a 2-day media blackout on the case and advised the family not to speak to the press. After Siobhan's killing, it was said that the Garda took this step to try and avoid publicity of the case, and to prevent a repeat of what had happened in the Rachel O'Reilly case 18 months earlier, where no charges had yet been brought. The blackout was lifted when Brian's mother-in-law informed him of Siobhan's passing. The McLaughlin family gathered, united in grief, while Brian received little sympathy, his sister offering consolation. The family referred to Siobhan by her maiden name, evidently privy to information unknown to others. Brian was extensively questioned. Could he leave, only to be told he had to speak to the detectives first? He also questioned whether they would want the clothes he was wearing, which was strange. Brian was eventually allowed to leave after speaking with the detectives, and he did not hand over the clothes for testing, as he had asked for a specific item of clothing from the back bedroom to change into. The police officers did not want to give him these clothes, so they let him leave with the clothes he was wearing. He went to stay with his parents, along with Daniel. Later that evening, Guardi went to the house to retrieve the clothes he was wearing, and it was discovered that his mother had washed the clothes. Very convenient. On Thursday, March 2nd, 49-year-old Brown was brought in for questioning and detained for 12 hours. Reports indicate he was picked up from his parents' home. After initially agreeing to cooperate with the investigation, he refused to answer any of the questions asked. He was released that evening. Guardi told the press that they were conducting further inquiries and a file would be prepared for the Director of Public Prosecutions. The Guardi interviewed Siobhan's friends and family, and they discovered that Siobhan was unhappy in her marriage and had visited a solicitor weeks before she died. She had also contacted the Citizens Advice Bureau for advice on separation and dividing assets. The family also revealed that they were suspicious of Brian and that he was a controlling individual. They provided an example of Siobhan being made to take out the dishes from the dishwasher and being required to wash them by hand because it was too expensive to run the dishwasher. He controlled the money, and she had to get his approval for everything. Siobhan sold her apartment, and Brian moved them to Spain. One of the sisters would say it was his dream to move to Spain, not Siobhan's. Siobhan's life was in Ireland, and she had no one in Spain. It was his way of isolating her from her friends and family. There was also a growing rift between Brian and the McLaughlin family. Brian delayed the funeral by 10 days after asking for a second autopsy. When a death notice was published in the newspaper, the McLaughlin family referred to Siobhan as McLaughlin and not Carney, and never mentioned Brian. Meanwhile, they published a separate notice in a different newspaper. At the funeral on the 11th of March, a picture was placed beside the coffin of Siobhan and her son, but Brian was left out. Additionally, at the funeral, the Kearney and McLaughlin families sat separately in the church. They did not look at each other or interact on the day. This is characteristic of Irish people. We do not hesitate to express our genuine feelings about someone. The week after the funeral, the Garda traveled to Spain and conducted a search of the hotel that Siobhan and Brian owned. Furthermore, Brian's mobile data was recovered, and it placed him at the scene of the crime at the time they believed Siobhan died. Witnesses reported seeing Brian in the driveway at the time he claimed to be at his brother's on the morning of the murder. Brian's DNA was also found on a part of the vacuum cord. On June 22, 2006, Brian was arrested again and questioned at Dundrum Garda Station. He was questioned for 8 hours before being released without charge. The Garda felt they had enough evidence at this stage and sent a complete file with all the new evidence gathered over the months to the Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP. It was now a waiting game. Meanwhile, Brian went to Spain to oversee all the preparations for the hotel's new season opening. However, once word spread about the murder, cancellations started coming in, and staff also quit, considering it too difficult to work without Siobhan, who was the backbone of the business's success. The staff's loyalty was to Siobhan, not Brian, which reflects the kind of person Siobhan was. The Guardia again returned to the hotel in Spain, and under oath in front of a Spanish judge, the staff gave evidence about Siobhan's demeanor in the weeks before her death. On December 10, 2006, Siobhan's family held a vigil outside her house where she was killed. Her sister said, "We are utterly distraught without Siobhan, but we are equally determined and will not rest until her killer is brought to justice." Siobhan was the embodiment of fun, life, joy, a terrific mother, and an adorable and hilarious sister and daughter, a true friend, and she will never be forgotten. 200 people turned up at the vigil. They held hands, sang hymns, and held up pictures of Siobhan. In January 2007, the newspapers once again spoke to Guardi's sources, and they said they were confident that an arrest would be made soon. However, the amount of evidence was substantial, and it would take time to go through it. On Tuesday, the 17th of January 2007, the inquest into Siobhan's death was postponed. The McLaughlin family appealed to the public for fresh information to convict the main suspect, Brian, as the Director of Public Prosecutions announced they needed even more evidence to go for a conviction of murder against Brian. Brian did not attend the short hearing. On May 30, 2007, Kearney was arrested at his home next to his original home with his kids. He was charged with Siobhan's murder, brought to court, and remanded to prison. His response was not guilty, and no bail request was made. The McLaughlin family attended the hearing, but Kearney avoided eye contact and chewed gum, disrespectfully. Kearney was freed on bail on June 6, 2007, after appealing to the High Court at Clover Hill Prison the previous day. His release came with conditions. He had to surrender his passport, pay €100, and provide a €55,000 bond from an independent juror, which his brother Patrick supplied. He also had to sign in weekly at Dundrum Garda Station. In July, a date was set for the trial to begin 6 months later, with a 4-week timeframe to hear all evidence and reach a verdict. So the trial was to start in early 2008. On February 11th, Kearney appeared for trial before Justice Barry White and a jury of 12. He pleaded not guilty. However, one juror worked for a home security company that had installed and serviced the Kearney residence system. While the defense was willing to continue with 11 jurors, the prosecution objected and the judge agreed. The jury was dismissed and a new one sworn in a week later. It was the prosecution's case that Kearney had murdered Siobhan, tried to stage it as a suicide, and left his son alone before going to work. The McLaughlin family testified about the events, and Siobhan's father found her dead. Her mother also recounted the morning's happenings, including Neve's wrong actions towards the authorities and Kearney. She said when Kearney arrived home, she broke the news to him that Siobhan was dead upstairs. When she had been on the phone with him, she had not told him what was wrong, and Kearney never asked. Deja also confirmed that in 1999, Siobhan had signed herself into the St. John of God's psychiatric unit after suffering from stress at work and what was described as a little breakdown. But after 5 days, she returned to work. Bridget, Siobhan's sister, stated that in 2005, Kearney phoned her to say that Siobhan was suffering from her nerves again. But when Bridget phoned Siobhan, she was perfectly fine. Ward, who worked for Colors Electrical with Kearney, said Carney was in the habit of arriving to work between 8:30 a.m. and 9 a.m., but on the morning of Siobhan's murder, he arrived extra early, between 7:50 a.m. and 8 a.m. A solicitor confirmed that multiple letters regarding the separation had been sent to Kearney, but he never responded to any of the correspondence. Kearney's statement to the guards was then read aloud. Kearney told the securities guards that on the morning of Siobhan's death, he had noticed her door was locked. The previous night, Siobhan and Daniel had returned home from a visit to her friend's house around 8:30 p.m., and Kearney had put Daniel to bed and slept in the same room, while Siobhan slept in the master bedroom. Kearney had said they woke up at 7 a.m. the next morning, had breakfast, and Kearney put on a DVD for Daniel, went upstairs to brush his teeth, and then attempted to enter Siobhan's room, but it was locked. He called out that he was leaving, went downstairs, kissed Daniel goodbye, and left for work. The court adjourned when a juror fell ill, but returned the next day. Evidence showed Siobhan couldn't have hanged herself. The pathologist found marks on her neck and chin, 3 larynx fractures, blood, and chin abrasions. She said the neck marks didn't come from hanging, significant force was applied, and Siobhan was assaulted in bed, gripped by the neck, and a ligature used to hasten her death. The security guards reported no signs of forced entry, as the house's windows and doors were in good working condition. The alarm company confirmed that the system was activated at 10:50 p.m. the previous night, and then immediately deactivated, and it was reactivated at 7:37 a.m. the next morning, before being turned off again. A thorough search of the Kearney residence uncovered a diary in the airing cupboard, and the writing inside was confirmed to be Siobhan's by her sister. Siobhan's solicitor had advised her to maintain a diary documenting the events of her marriage to Kearney. Additionally, Siobhan's passport was found wrapped in sheets and clothing in another area, and a €500 note was discovered in a drawer among wrapping paper. A financial forensic agent was next to take the stand. Kearney did own properties in Ireland and had a stake in the electrical business plus the hotel, but while he was asset-rich, he was cash-poor. On Monday, the 3rd of March, closing arguments began. The defense were first, and they said the prospect of splitting with Siobhan did not suit Kearney financially. He wanted to sell one of the houses at Knocknashee, but if Siobhan wanted to move into one of them, this would not be an option, and Kearney would have to work out his debt. In some other way, the fact that Siobhan had started to squirrel away money, hide her passport, keep a diary of her relationship with Kearney, and send solicitor letters showed her seriousness about leaving him. Siobhan was looking forward to her future and making plans, which showed that she was not suicidal. The evidence shown by forensics also showed that it was next to impossible that she had taken her own life. Kearney even admitted that he, Siobhan, and their son had been the only ones present that night. The defense recommended caution, as the prosecution had shown no hard evidence, and it was all circumstantial evidence. They said the jury needed to pay attention to what was missing in the case. There was no history of violence, no custody dispute, no alcohol abuse or jealousy. The jury was asked to ignore the emotions of the McLaughlin family when they were giving evidence. It is known that there doesn't have to be outward signs of abuse, as it's the rabbit hole of a course of control, which the family would say there was plenty of. Siobhan was strangled, and she had known Kearney since a very young age. There were no visible signs of physical violence, but there were extreme levels of control, like Kearney telling her to take the dirty dishes out of the dishwasher and hand wash them, because it would cost too much money. When Siobhan finally said she was going to a solicitor, that's when Kearney couldn't cope, and he took her life. Coercive control is considered a form of domestic abuse, even if there is no physical violence. This is a growing issue that we are only now starting to address in the 2020s. On the 4th of March, Justice Barry White charged the jury and referred to the victim as Rachel rather than Siobhan in his summing up, which was a terrible mistake. It so happened that at the same time, he was overseeing the case of Rachel O'Reilly, and he apologized. It wasn't the first or the last time that both women would be mentioned in each other's trial, as they both had died within 18 months of each other, under similar circumstances. The jury was discharged that evening, and the following evening, they came back with the verdict of guilty of murder by a majority verdict of 11-1. The McLaughlins wept and hugged each other as the verdict sunk in. Kearney made no reaction, but his daughter, who sat next to him, wept. And Kearney took his wedding ring off and took his wallet out and handed them to her. Kearney was sentenced to life there and then, and the McLaughlins asked to give a victim impact statement, but this was denied, which I don't understand why. Kearney was escorted to a van and brought to Whitfield Prison to start his sentence. Kearney lodged an appeal straight away, and it was heard in 2009, and the three-judge panel dismissed the appeal. In 2012, Kearney was refused permission to bring his appeal to the Supreme Court. 7 years later, in 2019, Kearney's applications for parole were refused on 2 occasions. Kearney's sister told her local radio news network that the parole board had recommended Kearney for 2 outside prison visits with his family, suggesting they were preparing him for release. However, the parole board will only recommend his release if he admits his guilt, which he has never done. As of 2022, although the Minister for Justice has the final say on any release, Kearney remains incarcerated. In prison, Kearney is a trained counselor to help other inmates with their mental health and works for the organization The Samaritans. He is also trained in first aid. While in prison, he decided to sell the hotel in Spain, but then took it off the market in 2010. The hotel was then run by his brother Patrick and his wife, and it is still open, although it may be under new ownership since then. Kearney said he wanted to keep the hotel in order to facilitate his son's education. The McLaughlin family sought to adopt Daniel, but it's unclear whether they did or how he is doing, which is good, as he deserves some peace, as does his half-sister Aisling. A family with 3 children lived in the house where Siaban was murdered, but it was up for sale for €1.4 million back in 2008. It's presumed that it has been sold since then. Kearney's daughter did live in the new house while he was still a free man, but there have been no updates on her either. If Kearney decided to sell off all his assets and pay off his debts, he will have a significant amount of money when he gets out, and he may even become a millionaire. The family were considering suing him for Siaban's chair at least, if not all, but there are no public details on this. Siaban's sister Aisling released a statement after Kearney's conviction, saying that while their lives were utterly destroyed by Siaban's death, Siaban had now got justice. They are grateful to have known and had someone as special as Shawnee in their lives, which was their nickname for her. However, they miss her every hour of every day, and the unbearable longing to see her and protect her never leaves them, even though they know it's too late. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Cécile Bloch. 3.5 decades after the chilling and mysterious murder of 11-year-old French girl Cécile Bloch, the veil of secrecy was finally lifted by the revelation of DNA evidence. Unveiled alongside this newfound truth after the 35-year hunt was a horrifying connection. The same malevolent hand that took Cécile's innocence also stained France with the blood of other victims during the dark period from 1986 to 1994. To make it worse, the chilling revelation was that the very person responsible for these heinous acts was someone who was supposed to be a guardian of the law, a gendarme and a policeman at the time of the murders. This is the tragic tale of Cécile Bloch. It's the fateful morning of May 5th, 1986. The universe seemed to conspire against 24-year-old Luc Bloch, with the day kicking off on the wrong foot. At first, his alarm clock didn't go off, and to make matters worse, nobody in the Bloch household had the foresight to rouse him from his restless slumber. Luc, now in a mad dash to get to work, also had to make sure his young sister wasn't late to school. With a sense of urgency gnawing at his heels, he calls out to his little sister, telling her to hasten her preparations for school as he hurriedly leaves the apartment. In those days, it was common for children to go to school on their own. Every morning on weekdays, the parents Jean-Pierre and Suzanne Bloch would embark on their own journeys to work by 8 a.m. Luc, too, would depart the family apartment, leaving just before Cécile, who typically set off for her classes around 8:45 a.m. Lunchtime brought a cherished routine. Cécile would return home alone, savoring a comforting bowl of soup before serenading the household with her beloved violin. This gifted young girl was a maestro of melodies and really loved music. She harbored an affection for dogs and also excelled at school. At noon, her loving mother Suzanne would routinely dial the family apartment to make sure her daughter got home safely and had taken her lunch. But on that fateful day, an eerie silence met her call. The girl didn't pick up the phone, and this would lead to a horrific revelation that would create many questions of what had truly transpired on this fateful day. Let me take you back to the moment Luc Bloch embarked on his daily journey to work. As he stepped out of the apartment, the darkness of the landing greeted him yet again. There was no light for the third consecutive day. Frustration coursed through him as his fingers fumbled in the inky darkness to find the elevator button. The only functioning elevator glided to a halt on the third floor, and inside stood a well-dressed young man. This man, possibly in his late 20s, possessed an athletic build with a pockmarked face. Luc, feeling a twinge of embarrassment, extended a cordial greeting, then disembarked on the first floor. The stranger wished him a strangely emphatic, "Good day." Something about this encounter struck Luc as peculiar. The man's politeness appeared excessive for a stranger. It was almost unnerving. In hindsight, Luc would recall the haunting final words uttered by this strange man. "Have a very, very good day." Little did he realize that in a matter of minutes, this very man would perpetrate the unspeakable to his young sister that would forever leave a scar in his heart. The clock struck 8:20 a.m., and within the building, the concierge perused a fresh newspaper while neighbors bustled about their morning routines. None among the building's residents could fathom that in just half an hour, young Cécile would meet her tragic fate. A fate that awaited her lifeless form in the shadowy depths of the building's basement, a staggering 3 floors beneath the building that was once her peaceful home. Suzanne, her heart sinking with each unanswered call, began to entertain a glimmer of hope that Cécile might be at her friend's house. She dialed the number, praying for a reassuring voice on the other end, but her fear intensified. As her friend confirmed the chilling truth, Cécile hadn't been to school, and she hadn't seen her that day either. By 1 p.m., panic had engulfed the parents, driving them to sprint back into the apartment, their frantic voices echoing as they desperately called out for their beloved daughter. Cécile was nowhere to be found. Suzanne's gaze fell upon her daughter's absent school bag, a sign that she had indeed departed. But to where? Meanwhile, Jean-Pierre initiated a series of agonizing calls to local hospitals, their anxious pleas met with the same heartbreaking reply. No girl matching Cécile's description had been admitted. In the building's lobby, the parents beseeched the concierge to aid in the search for their missing child. With urgency fueling their every step, they raced to the police station, scouring the nearby streets and playgrounds as they went. Cécile was known for her unwavering attendance at school, and there were no significant issues at home to explain her absence. The question loomed large. Why had she left, and where had she gone? The concierge, now joined by 2 concerned neighbors, embarked on a painstaking search of the building floor by floor, inching their way downwards, but the haunting truth remained. Cécile had vanished without a trace. All that remained was to descend into the foreboding cellar. The first room they entered was empty and devoid of any answers, while the second room stood locked. They then entered the third room, a chamber of forgotten clutter that obscured any immediate revelation. The room was a chaotic maze of forgotten possessions, a lot of junk from years past, so densely entangled that nothing could be seen at a single glance. In a breathless moment, a flashlight pierced the darkness, casting a feeble glow upon the basement's desolation. At first glance, it appeared vacant, but just as they were about to retreat, at the corner of his eye, one man caught a glimpse of something amiss in the periphery. A grimy, time-worn carpet that seemed to conceal something beneath it. He summoned the others, a glimmer of dread tugging at their hearts. Unfortunately, they found who they were looking for, but not the way they hoped they would find her. Outside the house, police cars and an ambulance had already arrived at the scene when Cecile's parents returned. They rushed past the gathered crowd in the basement. It was too late. The innocent life of young Cecile had already been taken, her innocence brutally shattered. The wheels of justice began to turn as a relentless investigation was launched into the heart-wrenching homicide. The grim investigation unveiled a chilling timeline. The malevolent intruder had infiltrated the block, lingering within its walls, and shared a sinister 40-minute encounter with Cecile, with witnesses testifying that he had departed the building at 9:20 a.m. They all echoed a hauntingly consistent description of the suspect. A dark-haired young man, aged between 25 and 30, his face marred by the cruel reminders of severe acne scars, the very same man who had exchanged strange pleasantries with Luke that morning. Drawing from the accounts of 6 witnesses and Luke's recollection, the police conjured a rough sketch of the malefactor, which found its way onto the pages of newspapers across France. While investigators managed to secure the assailant's biological material and ascertain his blood type, the nascent era of DNA forensics limited their progress. The evidence, a tantalizing puzzle piece, remained locked in a cold, waiting silence as the promise of breakthroughs in forensic science beckoned from the shadows. Yet the revelations remained scant, leaving a trail of unanswered questions and a community haunted by uncertainty. Just a month prior, the city had shuddered at the news of a similar predator haunting their midst. A man bearing an uncanny resemblance to the malefactor now under investigation had assaulted an 8-year-old girl in an elevator. Yet miraculously, she had survived to share her harrowing tale with investigators. This brave child, known only as Sarah, recounted how the man had cunningly posed as a police officer during the ordeal. What sent shock waves through the community were the eerie parallels emerging in 3 additional sexual assault cases. In these grim chapters, the assailant, employing the same sinister ruse, had targeted a 26-year-old woman and 2 young girls, aged 11 and 14. Each victim had fallen prey to his apparent police identification card and the menacing glint of handcuffs, tools of restraint that he employed with chilling precision. The authorities were gripped by a sense of urgency as they grappled with the unsettling question: was this a deceitful ploy to gain the trust of unsuspecting victims, or was he actually a police officer? Their suspicions were stoked not only by the violence inflicted upon his victims, but also by the chillingly calculated tactics he employed. A nagging intuition lingered among investigators, a conviction that this malefactor was no ordinary criminal. Their gut told them he was either a sworn officer or a gendarme, a belief that would later be chillingly confirmed. However, capturing this predator was far from straightforward, as he continued to elude the clutches of justice with diabolical cunning. Despite widespread distribution of the sketch to the local population, it proved futile in unmasking the perpetrator. By the close of 1987, a sinister shadow had been cast over a number of crimes, all attributed to this man, based on his distinctive appearance and chilling demeanor. The investigation remained in an agonizing deadlock for years, swinging back and forth between closed and reopened status. In a cruel twist of fate, the latest DNA tests conducted in a bid for justice yielded inconclusive results, shrouding the identity of the perpetrator in a veil of impenetrable darkness. Tragically, the parents of the young victim never lived to witness the moment of reckoning. Suzanne met her untimely end in a devastating traffic accident in 1989, while Jean-Pierre departed the world in 2011. Their hearts bore the heavy burden of never knowing the face of the monster who had stolen their beloved Cecile away forever, leaving a haunting legacy of unresolved pain and injustice. The embers of the unresolved mystery began to rekindle, lighting the way for the determined cold case detectives. They uncovered a piece of evidence that sparked a glimmer of hope. The killer, known to drive a white car, had once been a member of the prestigious gendarmerie. His chilling history culminated in a final crime committed near a gendarmerie training center. The techniques he used displayed the unmistakable signs of police and military training. In 2021, the police made a bold move. They called in around 750 former police officers who had worked in the Paris area during the time of the crimes. Among them was the very man who had evaded justice for so long, who was called in for questioning on September 29, 2021. The investigators' goal was clear: to collect the DNA of these suspects, hoping fervently that the murderer might finally be identified among them. The plot took a harrowing twist on September 24th, when a summons landed in the hands of a man, compelling his appearance for questioning on September 29th. The demand extended further, requiring the surrender of a DNA sample. However, in a startling turn of events, the narrative pivoted on September 27th when the man's wife reported him missing. As the clock ticked relentlessly towards the fateful date, the puzzle was far from complete. 2 days later, on September 29, 2021, in a quiet town in the south of France, tragedy struck in the form of a suicide. François Verove, a 59-year-old man, chose to end his own life, leaving behind a farewell note that laid bare a haunting confession. Among its chilling lines, it read, "I admit being a great criminal who committed unforgivable acts until the end of the 1990s." In a heart-wrenching conclusion, DNA tests revealed the somber truth. The man authorities had hunted relentlessly for years. The pockmarked man, the elusive predator, was unmasked as François Verove. However, much about his background remained shrouded in mystery. Born on January 22, 1962 in France, he had grown up under the stern gaze of a strict father, a stepmother, and 2 stepsisters. His biological mother had succumbed to the ruthless grip of the flu. In his youth, he had harbored an unsettling fascination with horror movies, perhaps offering a glimpse into the darkness that would later consume him. In 1983, François embarked on a new chapter as he moved to Paris and joined the National Gendarmerie. By June 1985, he had married and took it upon himself to construct a family home from the ground up, a testament to his ambitions. In the eyes of a former friend, he wore the dual masks of kindness and decency, but his temper lurked just beneath the surface, a volatile element that could erupt without warning. Behind this facade, however, lay a chilling truth. He was completely the opposite of the positive traits he may have portrayed to others. 4 innocent young girls had suffered beneath his sinister hand, miraculously escaping his clutches, all except for young Cecile Bloch. François' malevolence didn't stop there. In 1987, he cold-bloodedly murdered 2 adults, 38-year-old Gilles Politi and his devoted housekeeper, Irmgard Muller. Armed with crucial DNA evidence, investigators embarked on a gripping journey, determined to unravel the secrets of a malefactor whose dark deeds seemed endless. They fervently believed his sinister trail of crimes extended far beyond those already uncovered, driving them to delve deeper into unsolved cases, searching for hidden connections that could reveal the full extent of his reign of terror. Unfortunately, earthly justice may never hold him accountable for his atrocities, and retribution seems out of reach. The specter of his deeds looms large, leaving the question of inevitable justice to the realm beyond. As this harrowing tale unfolds, we are left with unanswered questions, wounds that may never fully heal, and the haunting presence of a man who committed unspeakable acts. François Verove may have evaded earthly justice, but his actions are forever etched in the indelible ink of infamy. Amidst the darkness, a glimmer of hope stands, as a testament to the relentless tenacity of those who pursued answers. With advancements in DNA technology, the truth emerged from the depths of despair. In the afterlife, in the realm beyond, justice may yet find its elusive mark, allowing the innocent souls scarred by his malevolence to finally rest in peace. In the shadow of these chilling revelations, let us remember all those who suffered at the hands of this predator. Their memory lives on as a reminder that even in the darkest corners of our world, the relentless pursuit of justice can be a beacon of hope. As we close this chapter of human frailty and malevolence, let us remember Cecile, not for the darkness that took her, but for the vibrant spirit she once embodied. For every life taken too soon, there remains a legacy that defies the shadows, a testament to the unwavering hope that someday justice will prevail. May the souls of Cecile and all the other victims rest in eternal peace. The Inman family projected an image of perfect harmony to those on the outside. They were regular churchgoers every Sunday to Warwoodportsing. Yet within their tight-knit circle, one could fathom what really happened behind closed doors. Back in 3, William and Sandra Inman's paths crossed at church. He was 18, she just 16. Their union received their parents' blessing, leading to marriage. The couple made their home in the modest community of Logan, located in Hawking County, Ohio. Bill Inman possessed strong religious convictions and balanced his job in construction with playing musical instruments for the Sky of Faith Evangelical Church in Nelsonville, Ohio. Sandra took on the role of managing the household. In 1984, they were delighted to welcome their son, William Jr. To distinguish between father and son, the head of the family was called Bill, while the younger one was known as Will. As time passed, William Jr. grew up. At age 17, in 2001, he met a 15-year-old named Summer Cook at church, quite reminiscent of his parents' encounter. Will and Summer maintained a friendship for 3 years before getting married when Summer turned 18 in 2004. The newlyweds began their life together by residing with Will's parents in a spacious house in Logan, Ohio. In that same year, when Bill reached the age of 39, he envisioned himself as a spiritual guide. Transforming his garage into a makeshift sanctuary, he began hosting gatherings there. Despite local skepticism towards this self-declared minister's actions, his enigmatic garage started to attract neighbors first, then their friends, and more individuals seeking solace through prayer and leaving offerings. By 2005, Will and Summer were overjoyed with the birth of their son Alex. Around this time, financial strains began affecting the Inman household, since Bill's religious endeavors were not financially rewarding. This situation led the family to consider relocating to another state in pursuit of better employment opportunities. By 2006, the Inman family had fully resettled in Florida. Both Bill and Will promptly secured employment in hotel construction. Meanwhile, Sandra and Summer dedicated themselves to homemaking and nurturing young Alex. 2 years later, the Inmans made their way back to Ohio from Florida. By then, they had forfeited their Logan home due to an inability to reclaim it and settled in a rental in Vinton's countryside. Starting a new chapter shortly after their relocation, in 2008, Will and Summer welcomed their second child, a daughter named Kelly. By 2010, their family grew with the arrival of another daughter, Alana. As young parents, Will and Summer often sought weekends away for relaxation and rejuvenation. During these times, Bill and Sandra, always supportive, took on the role of caring for their grandchildren. The weekends were filled with joy as they cherished moments with their 3 grandchildren. In the spring of 2010, Bill Inman secured a pastor's license and proclaimed himself the head of the Skinnier Faith Church. Alongside his wife, he established a charitable entity named Ranch of Mercy to assist the jobless and homeless. His vision was grand. He wanted to construct a large dwelling for orphans and widows. However, financial resources were quite lacking. To address this issue, Bill conceived a lottery scheme. Each participant would purchase a ticket with proceeds earmarked for building the shelter. The grand prize was either a house or $200,000 plus 99 other significant rewards. The community became aware of this lottery through news and advertisements. Bill initially promoted it door to door, assuring participants of lavish rewards, while emphasizing that surplus funds were destined for providing a haven for the destitute. Priced at $10 per ticket, Bill managed to sell 100,000 tickets, amassing $1 million for the project. The drawing was set for September 2010. In June 2010, personal upheaval struck the Inman family when Summer expressed her desire to divorce Will after 6 years of marriage. This declaration came not long after she had penned a significant entry in her personal diary. "I am utterly exhausted from constantly trying to please everyone around me. Do not deserve happiness. Do I not have the right to love someone and feel that love in return? I'm uncertain if now is the appropriate time, but I feel compelled to share everything with Will. It troubles me deeply, yet he deserves to know the truth. He should be aware that I no longer wish to be with him. I need to be alone to rediscover myself and understand my current identity. At this moment, I feel like a servant, perpetually running around and obeying others' commands. I adore my children with all my heart and would never trade them for anything. However, I don't want them to grow up witnessing their mother merely following orders all the time. I'm unsure how Will might react to this revelation. There's a chance he could become angry, attempt to take the children away, or worse, resort to threats or harm. It's important for our children to see us as equals. I'm aware that Will's parents might turn against me and try to convince me to stay, but such actions won't change anything. Last night, when Will asked me what I wanted, my mind was blank. All I could think of was what I don't want. I don't want to feel unhappy and trapped any longer, but I couldn't bring myself to voice these thoughts. So instead, I sat there in silence. Every day feels like a battle. All I yearn for is rest, to cry and sleep without interruption. But finding a way out of this situation seems impossible at times. My hope is that by the time of my next journal entry, I'll have clarity on how to resolve everything. As the summer progressed, we moved forward with the divorce proceedings. Departing from the Inman residence, I took our son and both daughters along with my personal belongings. We sought refuge at my parents' home. Wanting not to disrupt the children's relationship with their father or grandparents, visits were scheduled regularly for them. 2 months following our separation in August 2010, I began a relationship with Adam Peters while also securing employment at a bank in Logan's downtown area, working in a cleaning capacity due to limited educational background. When September arrived, it marked another significant event, the Ranch of Mercy's house raffle, spearheaded by the Inman family. Although construction on the prize house was supposed to begin, both September and October passed without any progress. No raffle took place, and no explanations were given. The organization didn't seem to rush to refund participants either. By December 1, 2010, the Inmans got a notice requiring them to leave their rented residence due to significant unpaid rent. In response, Summer and Adam went to collect her remaining belongings from the Inman home. However, they were denied entry. This led Summer to call the police, reporting that her estranged husband was intimidating her and preventing her from retrieving her possessions. When the police arrived, Will and his parents continued to block access. Will even escalated matters by threatening Adam and clashing with an officer. Consequently, Summer filed a legal complaint against Will. She reflected on their relationship, recalling how idyllic it seemed before marriage, but lamenting its drastic change afterward. Will's behavior reportedly became very controlling, affecting everything from her diet to household responsibilities, and even intimate aspects of their life. She wasn't allowed to sleep without his approval and was confined at home without access to her phone or keys. Summer revealed Will's aspirations for a large family, his interest in polygamy, and his activities on related websites, including posting inappropriate images. She also disclosed threats he made if she pursued divorce, and mentioned how her cats mysteriously disappeared. Will attributed their disappearance nonchalantly to them escaping through an open window. Following Summer's allegations, Will provided his version of events. He justified taking Summer's phone and keys by suggesting he suspected her of infidelity. Regarding the cats, he said that due to their wild behavior and damage caused to furniture and family members, he relocated them to a shelter. As a result of these conflicts and accusations, Will was subjected to a restraining order, preventing him from approaching Summer, and faced penalties and probation amidst further investigations. A fierce battle for custody emerged between the families. The Inmans filed police report against Adam Peters, labeling him a potential threat to the safety of Alex, Kelly, and Alana. Tragically, Summer's life took a dark turn. On the night March 22, 2011, Summerman, just 25 years old, was finishing her shift at the bank. She wrapped up her cleaning duties after the office had closed. Around 11 p.m., she stepped outside to dispose of the trash. Summer had texted her partner Adam to meet her after work, but he didn't find her by 11:30 p.m. Worried, Adam arrived at the bank and began his search. He discovered her personal items scattered near a dumpster in an alley, her phone, keys, and a music player still playing with headphones nearby in the grass. Her jacket lay there too. Alarmed, Adam immediately contacted Summer's parents to inform them of her disappearance, and stressed the need to alert the police swiftly. Initially, Summer's parents called the bank, guessing she might have stayed longer for extra work and misplaced her belongings. Security personnel had no clues about her whereabouts. They then contacted Logan Police to report Summer missing, emphasizing her punctuality and that she rarely stayed late at work. Police arrived at the scene, where they found Summer's belongings. They heard accounts from 3 eyewitnesses who saw her abduction about an hour earlier. 2 women out for an evening jog reported seeing Summer as she threw out the trash. At that moment, a white Ford Crown Victoria, driven by a blonde woman, approached. 2 individuals dressed in black balaclavas exited the vehicle and forcefully grabbed Summer, shoving her into the back seat despite her resistance and cries for help. One bystander's attempt to intervene was thwarted when the female driver incapacitated him with pepper spray, forcing him to retreat. The car quickly left the area. The 2 jogging witnesses immediately headed to the nearest police station to report what they had witnessed. Their account initially faced skepticism from the police, who found their narrative peculiar and doubted its authenticity. Expecting it might be a fabricated story, the police reached the abduction site of Summer Inman just an hour after her parents filed the missing person report. However, initial efforts did not lead to locating the missing 25-year-old. News of Summerman's kidnapping quickly circulated through all local media outlets, capturing the community's attention. Hundreds of Logan's residents united in a concerted effort to locate her. As 3 days elapsed, the possibility of finding Summer safe and sound grew increasingly faint. Throughout this harrowing time, her parents endeavored to maintain hope against despairing thoughts. Shortly before her disappearance, Summer Inman shared a photo on Facebook featuring herself, her new partner Adam, and her children. The image portrayed them as a content family unit. Will Inman, who had access to Adam Peters' Facebook page, surprisingly still on his friends list despite being Summer's current partner, noticed this update. It raises an intriguing question. Why would a husband befriend his wife's new companion? The backstory revealed that Adam, a man without stable employment, had been hired by the Inmans a year earlier, in spring 2010, for various household tasks. It was then that Adam and Summer crossed paths and developed a bond. Despite initial reluctance, Summer eventually reciprocated Adam's affections. Her diary entry reflects this internal conflict. When I looked into his eyes, I realized that the devil had taken over me. I didn't listen to what God was telling me. I tried to stop. My mind screamed, "Run, get out of here now." But instead, I stayed and let him embrace me and then delve deeper. I am very sorry about this. I am guilty. This encounter signified the unraveling of Summer's life within the Inman family. Yearning for happiness and love, she initiated divorce proceedings which were prolonged 5 days before vanishing. Will tested the proposed spousal support per child monthly, suggesting a reduction to $50 given his annual earnings of just $6,000. Will and his parents sought full custody of the children, but their petition was rejected by the court. After losing contact with their grandchildren, Bill and Sandra visibly deteriorated. They lost weight and were clearly affected, as those who knew them concurred that the grandchildren were the light of their lives. In March 2011, amidst the investigation into Summer's disappearance, the Inman family was located. They were found at the residence of Bill's 70-year-old mother in Jackson, Ohio. Bill, Sandra, and Will collectively asserted their ignorance regarding Summer's abduction. The Inmans recounted that on the night of Summer's kidnapping, they were en route to Cleveland to view a new property. However, they encountered car trouble after 3 hours on the road, leading to an overnight ordeal of vehicular repairs on the roadside before returning to Logan the next morning. They maintained that their interactions with Summer were generally amicable, with infrequent disputes. Yet they attributed a shift in their familial harmony to Adam Peters' employment in their household, describing this phase as challenging. The trio consistently portrayed Adam as a negative influence, alleging he was the catalyst for the disintegration of their previously harmonious and tightly knit family. The investigation took a crucial turn when police noticed a white Ford Crown Victoria at the Inman family's residence. Upon inspection of the vehicle, a GPS receiver was confiscated. Subsequent examination revealed that on March 22nd, the day Summer was abducted, this car was in Logan. The GPS was deactivated at 5:30 p.m. that evening and reactivated the next morning again in Logan, contradicting the Inman's claim of traveling to Cleveland. Phone records further corroborated that all three family members were in Logan on both March 22nd and 23rd. Additional inquiries revealed that on the morning of March 23rd, around 7:30 a.m., the Inmans were at a car wash engaging in a thorough interior cleaning of the vehicle. Bill, Sandra, and Will were all present, but Summer was notably absent following this event. They visited an auto shop in Cleveland for a tire change. While there, a shop employee noticed something odd. Bill was choosing to replace nearly new tires with used ones, simply because he didn't like his current set chained. There was also evidence that the Inmans attempted to modify the car's appearance. Notably, Bill had removed a police spotlight that had previously been mounted on the driver's side door next to the mirror. Bill, Sandra, and Will Inman were apprehended and brought in for interrogation. Prior to their arrest, Bill assured his elderly mother of their innocence, attributing the situation to a test from the devil. Throughout the questioning, they consistently claimed they were unaware of Summer Inman's abduction and didn't know who the kidnapper was. However, after several hours and faced with the possibility of capital punishment if convicted, Sandra Inman's resolve faltered. Eventually, she disclosed the truth. Sandra confessed that they were responsible for Summer's abduction on the night of March 22nd. She detailed how Bill and Will had disguised themselves in black masks. Sandra admitted that her initial plan was merely to abduct and intimidate Summer. However, events took an unexpected and tragic turn. According to Sandra's confession, when Summer was forcibly placed in the car's back seat, Will restrained her with plastic ties around her neck, hands and feet, intending merely to frighten her into granting him access to their children. As the situation escalated, Will realized that Summer was on the brink of unconsciousness. He panicked and desperately searched for a knife to release her, shouting frantically to his mother, "Oh my God, Mom! Where's the knife? I can't find it." Amidst their collective fear and desperate search for the knife, the situation worsened. Summer ceased breathing and tragically passed away. Sandra maintained that their objective was never to take Summer's life. They merely sought a resolution to their custody dispute and hoped to ensure regular visits with their grandchildren. On March 29, 2011, a week after the kidnapping, Sandra Inman disclosed the location of the body. Summer's remains were found in a septic tank on the grounds of Skinnier Faith Church near Nelsonville, about 30 kilometers from her workplace. Bill Inman had been involved in the church's construction. This place held personal significance for him and Sandra, as it was where they had married 28 years earlier. The Inmans were regulars at this church. Bill participated in its musical ensemble. Police uncovered the well by removing a concrete slab and unscrewing 6 bolts from the metal lid. When they opened it, they immediately saw Summer's legs. She had been thrown headfirst into the septic tank, still wearing her work attire. Her black t-shirt bore an ironic inscription, "I don't have anger issues, I have issues with idiots." A forensic examination confirmed that Summer had succumbed to strangulation. Apart from marks on her neck, hands, and legs indicating she'd been restrained, no other injuries were found on her body. This highlighted strangulation as the cause of her tragic demise. Sandra revealed that she originally planned to dispose of the body in a river, but reconsidered and decided it would be safer to conceal it in the well near the church. She believed this location would ensure it remained undiscovered for a long time. Sandra admitted to feeling deep shame for her actions and their irreversible consequences. During the subsequent trial, 49-year-old Bill Inman and 28-year-old Will Inman did not take any responsibility for Summer's death. Throughout the proceedings, they stayed mostly silent, showing no visible emotions and avoiding eye contact with Summer's grieving parents. Sandra Inman, at 47 years old, stood out as the only family member who accepted responsibility for her part in the tragic events. She maintained that the plan to intimidate Summer was entirely her own idea. In a deeply emotional moment before sentencing, Sandra, overcome with tears, faced Summer's parents and begged for their forgiveness. Her speech, though broken by sobs and a quivering voice, clearly expressed remorse. Sandra admitted she saw Summer as a daughter and regretted her catastrophic decision. In 2012, the verdict was handed down. All 3 members of the Inman family were convicted. Bill and Will Inman received life sentences without the possibility of parole. Sandra Inman also got a life sentence, but with eligibility for parole after serving 15 years. However, among friends and church members familiar with the family's dynamics, doubts arose about Sandra being the mastermind behind the crime. It was commonly known that Bill had a dominant role in the family and usually made final decisions on all matters. Will, on his part, was seen as a pampered child whose desires were always met by his parents. Those close to the family speculated that Sandra's confession might have been a strategic move to reduce legal consequences for her husband and son. Currently, Alex and Alana are being raised by Summer's family. For quite some time, it was hard to explain to these grandchildren where their mother, father, grandmother, and grandfather had gone.
Hi everyone, my name is Jack and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sheila Labar, a monster with an angelic appearance. Psychological and physical traumas received at an early age can have a very unpredictable effect on adult life. Of course, far from always, they lead to the fact that a person becomes cruel and seeks to hurt others. But sometimes it is the trauma can give rise to a real monster. Criminal psychologist Adrian Rain believes that there are genetic and psychophysical mechanisms that can turn a person into a cold-blooded killer, about which he wrote in detail in his book, Anatomy of Violence. History knows a lot of serial criminals who had a truly hellish childhood, and perhaps to them can be attributed our heroine today, Sheila Labar. This woman had an angelic appearance which she skillfully used, seducing her victims and then brutally murdered them. Despite the fact that the court was able to prove only 2 of her crimes, criminologists are sure that there were many more. And now let's look at this difficult story from the beginning and try to understand whether Sheila Labar was a born monster or became him as a result of the cruelty that she faced in childhood. Who is Sheila Labar? Sheila Labar was born in 1958, the 4th of July, in the small country town of Fort Payne, Alabama. She was the youngest of 3 children of her parents and was raised with her brother and sister Lynn. Her childhood was spent in a picturesque but rather secluded place, on a farm nestled among cornfields. According to the memories of Lynn's older sibling, Sheila was an active, inquisitive, and open-minded girl with a creative streak. She liked to be in the center of attention, had a good voice and cute appearance, so perhaps, if her life had turned out differently, she would have become a famous actress or singer. But instead of bright posters, her name decorated the pages of criminal chronicles. The unimaginable cruelty of her father, the head of the family, Manuel Bailey for many years suffered from alcohol addiction, although it would be more accurate to say that his addiction suffered from his entire family. He often went on binges, turning into a real beast who enjoyed abusing his wife and children. He insulted and humiliated them, beat them with anything that came to hand, could throw everyone out in the middle of the night in a downpour or frost, and locked himself in the house, not letting anyone inside. Mothers, daughters, and sons often had to spend the night in a barn or in the open air in the field. One day, when Manuel was once again in a drunken rage, he began throwing dishes and other objects at his family members. The mother tried to cover the children as best she could, but one of the flower pots thrown by her husband hit her youngest daughter Sheila in the head. Sheila suffered a serious concussion and a lifelong scar on her temple, which she painstakingly covered with her hair. But not even the insults and beatings were the worst thing that the sisters had to endure in their parents' home. According to the memories of Sheila and Lynn, Manuel from an early age forcibly inclined them to intimacy. The mother may have been aware of what was going on, but the subject was never broached. However, despite the nightmare at home, Sheila did well enough in school. She dreamed of leaving the farm as soon as possible and go to conquer the big city. The girl was quite ambitious and determined. She passionately wanted to realize her childhood dream in life and become an actress or pop singer. And she had everything for this: charisma, bright appearance, and a beautiful voice, adulthood, first marriage. Barely Sheila was 18 years old. She left her parents' home, but adult life was not so joyful. To enter the university, she was not allowed to average score, and to move to the big city, she simply did not have the money. Then Sheila got a job as a maid in one of the hotels, where by that time her older sister was already working. It should be noted that Sheila had a slender figure and a very attractive appearance. She had big blue eyes, a charming smile, and a mop of thick long hair. She was surrounded by attention from men, and over time, she learned to use it and manipulate her suitors. In the late 70s, Labar, then Bailey, met a guy named Jonathan Baxter, and a romantic relationship began between them. Jonathan was not yet 20 years old at the time, but he already had a young daughter from a previous relationship. However, the child did not become a hindrance, and soon the couple got married. However, this marriage lasted only a few months and collapsed after Jonathan learned that the young wife abused his daughter while he disappeared at work. Jonathan did not organize scandals and listen to explanations. He just Strasut filed for divorce and put his wife with his belongings outside his house. He never wanted to see or hear from her again. After the divorce, Sheila dated various men and mostly lived off them. But all these relationships were fleeting and lasted from a few weeks to a couple of months, until in the early 80s she met her future second husband, Ronnie Jennings. The tumultuous romance soon led to marriage, and Sheila took on a double last name, Bailey Jennings. It was an unhealthy relationship between two irascible and unstable people who regularly cheated on each other, scandalized, and even fought. Still, their marriage lasted more than 3 years. In 1984, after another family quarrel, Sheila demanded a divorce from her husband, but he refused her. In fact, Ronnie did not hold on to the relationship at all. He just wanted to piss off his wife and make her mad, and he succeeded. Sheila became hysterical, took a large number of drugs in front of her husband, drinking strong alcohol, and after this infernal cocktail, sat behind the wheel of the car and rushed down the road. Naturally, soon Sheila, under the influence of pills and alcohol, lost consciousness, flew off the road, and at high speed crashed into a tree. She miraculously survived, but suffered a massive head injury. She spent more than a week in a deep coma, and doctors made no prognosis. When Sheila finally regained consciousness and gradually recovered, she was transferred to a psychiatric hospital where she spent several months. She later complained to her sister that one of the orderlies was constantly harassing her and possibly taking advantage of her helpless state when she was heavily sedated. After all this, Sheila returned to her second husband's home, but began to behave not just aggressively, but threateningly toward him. When during another scandal she attacked Ronnie and poked him in the chest with nail scissors, Ronnie, fearing for his own life and health, filed for divorce and hurriedly moved out of the mad woman. Rich lover. When the second marriage was dissolved, The young woman began looking for lovers through the dating columns of the print media, and she left her ads there as well. But no man did not stay with her for long, because Sheila tended to dominate everything, rigidly suppressing their partners both in intimate and everyday life. Soon the photo of an attractive girl in the dating section drew the attention of 60-year-old Wilfred Bill Labar. The man had previously been married twice and had adult children and grandchildren from previous marriages. He was widowed a few years ago and had been living alone on his large country ranch ever since. Bill was a fairly wealthy man. He had a chiropractic office in Epping, New Hampshire, and on the ranch he raised horses. At the same time, he was very lonely and needed a strong, powerful woman. In fact, that's exactly what he found. Sheila was attracted by the wealth of her new acquaintance, and she decided that it would be an ideal union for her. And to make Bill completely lost his head, she began to send him a postal mail frank letters, supplementing them with her nude photos. The trap worked, and soon Labar invited a charming pen pal to visit his ranch. Their romance developed rapidly. An elderly man is not stingy on expensive gifts for a young mistress, and in the summer of 1987, she moved to live with him. This has incredibly flattered the doctor, who now went out in public with a beautiful companion who was half his age and was fit for him as a daughter. Nevertheless, he did not plan to marry Sheila. However, Sheila, not waiting for a marriage proposal, changed her name, calling herself Labar. Bill was surprised by this turn of events, but he did not object. Sheila began to interfere in all the affairs of her elderly lover, starting to control his business, finances, and disposition of his property. In addition, Bill was getting older and could not satisfy the intimate needs of a young woman. Then, according to Sheila herself, he allowed her to meet other men whom she often brought directly to their home. One of Sheila's regular lovers, closer to the mid-90s, was a Jamaican national named Wayne Ennis. He was much younger than Sheila and was initially hired as an au pair on the ranch, but soon the young man, with Bill's consent, which was probably given under pressure from Sheila, moved to live in the owner's house. In 1995, Sheila and Wayne officially legalized their relationship, and the spouse considered that from now on, he would be.
The couple continued their relationship online. Sherry sent photos of ultrasounds and her growing belly. I just bulged out my belly. Jerry wanted to believe it so badly that I had no doubt. He would see the pregnancy even if it wasn't there, Miller would later say. Soon, on November 5, 1999, Jerry Cassidy received an email, presumably from Bruce Miller, in which he wrote that he knew about everything and would not let the bastards be born. A concerned Jerry tried to contact Sherry. Hours later, she texted him herself, informing him that she had to leave for a few days and that she would text him later. The next day, Jerry received a message from Bruce and learned that he had forced his wife to have an abortion. Attached to the letter were photos of a battered Sherry. I remember standing in front of the mirror trying to draw bruises on my stomach. Sherry would later recount. Jerry had reached a tipping point. His children, not one but two twins at once, had been killed by Bruce Miller. He was again devastated and full of anger. He blamed Bruce for the deaths of his 3 children and the abuse of the woman he loved. After reconnecting with Sherry the next day, November 8th, Jerry said he couldn't go on like this. He would kill her husband. The couple set about devising a plan to kill him. They worked out routes, parking spots, and even the best place and time to get to the dump. Jerry then made the long drive from his home to Michigan. That same evening, as Bruce planned to leave work, he received a call from Sherry and, following the plan, asked if he could pick up a pizza on his way home. Distracted by the conversation, Bruce did not notice a man approaching him from behind, pointing his 20-gauge shotgun at him and pulling the trigger. After committing the crime, Jerry went home and Sherry began the next part of the plan. She called Bruce's brother, Chuck, said she was very worried about her husband's long absence, and asked Chuck to drive to the junkyard and see if everything was okay. When Chuck got there, he found his brother dead on the floor in a pool of blood. He had been shot in the chest with a shotgun at close range. According to eyewitnesses, when Sherry learned of Bruce's death, she began screaming and crying. The crime scene was quickly discovered, but no trace or evidence of the suspect remained. Detectives learned that Bruce carried large amounts of cash, and they initially thought his death may have been the result of a botched robbery as the dead man's wallet was missing. John Hutchinson, a friend and employee of Bruce's who had recently borrowed $2,000 from him, came under suspicion. Police questioned Hutchinson, searched his home, and confiscated weapons. John adamantly denied involvement. The search was inconclusive, and despite the fact that Hutchinson failed a polygraph test, he was eventually released. A theory of murder due to falsification of vehicle identification numbers was considered. However, none of the options did not give any leads, and soon the case was closed. Meanwhile, according to Bruce's sister Judy Miller, Cherry's behavior did not fit most people's idea of a grieving spouse. 2 days after the death of her supposedly beloved husband, she was already dancing in a bar in Otisville, Michigan, and looked happy. 2 weeks later, she had a boyfriend, and it wasn't Jerry Cassidy, but a local delivery boy named Jeff Foster. The goal was accomplished. It was like Sherry had passed a level in a video game, and the former lover was no longer interesting. Jerry thought that after the murder, he would be with the woman he loved. After all, he killed for her, but that didn't happen. She began to distance herself, and a month after the murder, she moved her new boyfriend Jeff Foster into the house she used to share with her husband and completely severed her relationship with Jerry, leaving him devastated. It was probably at this point that Cassidy realized he had murdered an innocent man in cold blood, and
Naturally, Sheila chose an occupation to her liking. She became an operator of intimate phone services. Since she had a truly enchanting voice, men fell for the bait and offered to meet her in person. Among such guys was Kenny County, who at the time of their acquaintance was barely 24 years old. The young man was attractive in appearance, very good-natured and open. However, he had a low IQ level, due to which he was very gullible. This was exactly the kind of guy Labar was looking for. Kenny was very close to his mother, on whom he actually depended, but Sheila, with the help of clever manipulations, managed to break this connection and literally lure Kenny to herself. She made him an unforgettable night of love and promised that they would be like this all the time. The young man decided that he had met the woman of his dreams, about which he informed his relatives, and then moved to live in Sheila's house. But soon Sheila showed the guy her true face, having arranged for him a real torture room in one of the rooms. Each time, intimacy inevitably turned into a brutal beating, or something worse. Kenny's body was covered with bruises, abrasions, scratches, cuts, and burn marks, but he could not leave the house of the mistress who had completely subjugated his will. Sheila did not allow him to see and communicate with his loved ones, and his family could only guess what was happening to Kenny. The first alarm was raised by neighbors who periodically noticed the guy and were horrified by his sickly appearance. A few days before his disappearance, a local store clerk took a picture of the young man on her cell phone camera, and later this picture was attached to the case file in court. In the photo, Kenny's condition could be described as deplorable. He was very thin, there were huge bruises under his eye and on his cheek, and his nose was probably broken. Judging by the degree of healing, all these injuries had been inflicted at different times, which suggested that the guy had been brutally beaten for a long time. The contents of his cart were also alarming. He rolled 2 large canisters of fuel to the cash register, as it later turned out, for his own cremation. The store employees were so puzzled and even frightened by the guy's appearance that they decided to report him to the police for possible domestic violence. But this time, Sheila managed to get away with it, and they could not charge her with anything. Soon Kenny stopped contacting his family altogether, and when his worried mother arrived at Labar's house, the owner behaved aggressively and advised to leave Kenny alone. All subsequent attempts ended similarly, at which point Kenny County's family filed a missing persons report with the police, indicating that he may be being held forcibly at the country ranch, a home crematorium, and gruesome findings. When police arrived at Sheila's home, she claimed that the young man no longer lived with her, and claimed that Kenny had run away because his mother, whom he was allegedly terrified of, began visiting them frequently. As evidence, Sheila provided an audio recording in which she asks her lover if his own mother had attacked him, and he quietly gives an affirmative answer. It all seemed more than strange, and the very next day, An officer visiting Sheila secured a search warrant for the estate. Sheila had been on the police's radar many times before, and her name had been linked to another mysterious disappearance of a boyfriend. But over the years, Sheila had never been questioned, and her house and grounds had never been searched. When the police arrived, they did not find Labar at home, but they did see several fires burning near the outbuildings. The fires looked strange and were made of improvised materials: a mattress, fragments of wooden furniture, hay, etc., all doused with a flammable mixture. One of the bonfires had bones in it that clearly looked like human remains. The squad requested reinforcements in the form of forensic experts, reporting all the findings, but that turned out to be just the tip of the iceberg compared to what they discovered next. Almost all over the house were found poorly washed traces of blood. It was so much that it seemed as if there had been a real massacre. It turned out that the blood belonged to at least 3 different people. The bones smoldering in the fire belonged to the missing Kenny, and
I remember hearing her scream, "No, Mommy, no, don't go." After that moment, the full implications of what I had done to Bruce, his friends, his family, Jerry, his friends and his family hit me with full force. They will never see them again. Bruce was a great man, Sherry Miller wrote of her husband. He never hurt me or my children. All he did was love us. He wanted to adopt my children. He just wanted a family. The only man who loved me, and I ordered him killed. In 2022, Sherry gave a public interview to a popular TV station. She admitted that Bruce was not involved with the mob and never abused her. She admitted that she used makeup to fake bruises and faked ultrasound scans to manipulate Jerry. According to Sherry, she didn't do it for the money. She said that she was afraid Bruce would find out who she really was and felt that it would be easier for him to be killed than to learn the truth about her. Sherry admitted that she knew about Jerry's tendency toward depression and the briefcase of evidence, but was confident that she would talk herself out of anything and could manipulate the jury and the court. She was so convinced of this that she turned down a plea bargain that could have gotten her 15 years instead of a life sentence. According to Sherry, it took a public story to find peace with herself. It's still very hard for me to look in the mirror, realizing what I did. I've been waiting to tell the truth, and hopefully get a sense of peace from it. Sherry Miller remains incarcerated at the Huron Valley Women's Complex in Michigan. She is not eligible for parole.
In one voice, called her a crazy, unstable, and extremely violent woman. And Wayne Annis, the third husband, said that the ex-wife repeatedly persuaded him to kill Mr. Labar in order to seize his property. But despite the defense's attempts to convince the court that Sheila was insane and in need of treatment, it was proven that she was aware of her actions at the time of her crimes. She was found guilty in July 2008 and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of ever being released. All of her appeals were rejected. Sheila is now serving her sentence in Florida at Homestead Correctional Facility. Thanks for watching, guys. That was Jack. Subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click on the bell not to miss new stories. Hello! See you soon. Take care.
But he's not a murderer. During the final sentencing, excitement gripped the Eckerd parents. Judge Anthony imposed a sentence of 50 years in prison without parole. The parents were broken. One miserable day had taken 2 sons from them at once. The cold-blooded murder of an innocent man and even a brother is clearly beyond the bounds of adequate human response. In the biblical story, the brother killer Cain was banished from paradise as punishment. But he solved the problem differently, eliminating the source of his remorse. See saliva at his home.